Chapter 1417. Chu Yang nodded his head lightly. Smart kids remember network super fast hands. Mo Tianji's face was red with excitement as he said, "Then go quickly." He actually urged Chu Yang. Chu Yang laughed out loud and comforted Mo Qingwu. Then he walked forward. The little girl had just received great benefits and was discussing excitedly with Mo Leu. When she heard that he was leaving temporarily, she didn't even turn her head. She just waved her hand and said, "Go ahead. I don't have time for you now," she continued to discuss with Mo Leu. Gu Duxing and the others were also circulating their energy to check the changes in their bodies. They were pleasantly surprised by the new discoveries. With the dragon and phoenix essence in their bodies, the speed of their internal energy circulation had basically doubled. Furthermore, the dragon and phoenix essence had the effect of automatically improving their physique. One had to know that increasing the circulation of inner strength by 1-fold did not equate to training. Instead, it indicated that as long as one's hands and feet could keep up with the circulation of inner strength, then one's attack speed could be doubled from the current foundation. Now, everyone was already considered fast. If it was doubled, what would it be like? At the thought of this, the brothers were so excited that they almost suffocated. Chu Yang calmed himself down and walked in. When he passed by the place where the dragon and phoenix originally stood, his eyes fixed in one direction. He turned his body slightly and walked in resolutely. When the dragon and phoenix essence had just been absorbed, Chu Yang had already received a notification from the Sword Spirit. "Lord Swordmaster, I've discovered the aura of the 7th fragment of the Tribulation Sword." Before this, Chu Yang couldn't be sure. Ever since the Sword Spirit said this, it was really as if a rock had been lifted. After turning a corner, there was a perfectly round stone wall in front of him. Chu Yang didn't stop at all. He directly reached out and grabbed it. Instantly, a huge hole was created. Although the defense here was tight and strong, it borrowed the power of the dragon and phoenix. Now that the power of the dragon and phoenix was gone, with Chu Yang's current cultivation, this stone wall was as soft as tofu in front of him. He grabbed it. His palm sucked on the stone wall and pulled outwards. A large piece of it with a radius of 40 to 50 feet was pulled out. He casually placed it aside and then the next piece. After a few pieces, a huge hole that was several feet deep had already appeared. Chu Yang went in head first. He had already done this job several times. It was really easy to do. It was a walk in the park. Even a professional miner could only be second to him. Chu Yang dug all the way down, following the Tribulation Sword's guidance. He could vaguely feel that his Calamity Sword was getting more and more excited. The sword energy was moving faster and faster around the sword, and the sword spirit was getting more and more eager, and beneath the stone wall. Moreover, there was an urge to come out, an emotion that couldn't be suppressed. Throbbing, Chu Yang's hands didn't stop. Big stones were thrown from behind him one after another. Finally, the sound of gurgling water came from underground. It was very pleasant to the ears. At the same time, Chu Yang's left eye suddenly became clear, while his right eye became confused. This feeling appeared for a moment, and then disappeared. Then Chu Yang was startled. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit said, "This is the misty heaven crystal and the evil illusionary jade crystal. They welcome your arrival." Chu Yang was speechless. Were these two miraculous herbs welcoming him too? This is nonsense. The evil illusion jade crystals here are different from the misty heaven crystals and other spirit herbs. The sword spirit said, "They have grown for at least 100,000 years, or even longer. It's only natural for them to possess some spirituality." Chu Yang made an oath sound. Then he nodded. After continuing to dig down another 30 feet, Chu Yang only felt emptiness under his hands. A wave of moist air hit him in the face. He took a closer look. He couldn't help but be stunned. There was actually an underground lake below. The heart of the underground lake. There were two big fountains. They were 1,000 feet apart, and each of them gurgled with spring water. The spring water that emerged from one side was milky white and had a fragrance to it. The spring water on the other side was clear and clear, without any smell at all. The entire lake water was also clearly separated from each other. The one 500 feet side was completely milky white, while the other side was completely clear. They actually didn't invade each other in the same lake, forming a strange underground lake. Anyone who saw this would definitely exclaim that it was strange. Chu Yang jumped down and stood in this milky white spring water. He felt comfortable all over. He naturally knew that this milky white spring water was the crystal spirit spring. Before he figured out the situation, even though Chu Yang was extremely daring and knew that nothing would happen, he still didn't dare to stand in the water of the evil spirit illusionary spring. It was better to be safe than sorry. If he fainted here, he wouldn't lose his life, but it would be very embarrassing. The sword spirit saw Chu Yang's concerns and held back his laughter. He said, "Keep this spring water. I've already guessed the location of the tribulation space." Chu Yang nodded and waved his hand. Immediately, 2 water arrows shot out from the lake and into the tribulation space. Even if they were absorbed together, they were still clearly divided. Chu Yang looked up and saw countless small holes above his head. He didn't know where they led. The side that belonged to the evil spirit illusionary spring was extremely moist and full of water. But the side that belonged to the crystal spirit spring was dry. Chu Yang finally understood how his grandfather and the others found it. It must be that the water vapor of the evil spirit illusionary spring flowed out from here. After reaching a certain space above, the moisture gathered and the water vapor formed a new water flow, which flowed out from there drop by drop. It must have been accidentally discovered by Yang Bao and the others when they were excavating the purple crystal mine, and it was impossible to find the main body of the evil spirit illusionary spring from that direction. Because who knew where it was? Anyway, it had a lot to do with this side. The sound of flowing water disappeared. The ground below Chu Yang's feet had already become dry. Only the 2 spring mouths on the left and right were still spewing out mist. But the mist disappeared right after. Chu Yang perked up. He grabbed down with one hand and started digging again. Gradually, Chu Yang's expression became strange as he dug down more than 100 feet. Here, it was clearly sliding down diagonally. If that was the case, could this ethereal heavenly crystal be? Chu Yang pulled himself out and went to the opposite side. As he dug down, he indeed discovered that the evil illusionary jade crystal was also slanting down. Chu Yang gave a wry smile. He channeled his energy and lifted up the entire piece of ground from 100 feet below. It was erected to one side. He turned to look. Sure enough, the spring mouths of the crystal spirit spring and the evil illusionary jade crystal were now less than 200 feet apart. One must know that they were originally 1,000 feet apart. Chu Yang started from the middle and lifted up another 100 feet of ground. The 2 spring mouths were now less than 30 feet apart. Could it be that these 2 were originally together? Muttering, Chu Yang began to slowly exert force downward. At this point, he couldn't make any more big movements. Otherwise, if something were to be destroyed, Chu Yang would really be dumbfounded. After digging for 30 feet, Chu Yang was startled as he reached out his hand. It already felt somewhat warm. We're almost there. The sword spirit reminded him. The evil illusionary jade crystal and the ethereal heavenly crystal are different from others. They won't give birth to jade cores and the like. They only produce spring water. I see. Chu Yang had thought that it would be like the mysterious Yang jade and mysterious Yin jade. It looked like that wasn't the case. Chu Yang lifted up a depth of 30 feet with one hand. The moment he lifted it up, a strange feeling suddenly welled up in Chu Yang. It seemed that on the left, there was a virtuous lady looking at him tenderly and affectionately. She was as beautiful as jade, as beautiful as a flower, and as poetic as a poem. Even if she didn't speak or move, he could still feel the elegant and quiet aura coming from her. On the right, there was a devastatingly beautiful enchantress who could cause the downfall of a country. She was looking at him flirtatiously, coquettishly, making one bold move after another. Filled with boundless temptation, Chu Yang was shocked. He hurriedly looked left and right. On the left, there was a piece of milky white spiritual jade lying there quietly. On the right, there was a piece of transparent jade lying there. The distance between the 2 pieces of jade was less than 5 feet, and he was standing right in between them right now. How strange. Chu Yang scratched his head. These two pieces of jade actually give me the feeling of two great beauties. The sword spirit didn't say anything, but Chu Yang could totally feel it. This guy was looking at him with great interest, watching which piece he wanted to take first. There's a saying, right? Chu Yang narrowed his eyes. Sword spirit? The sword spirit smiled bitterly. Beauties are like jade, and jade is like a beauty. Now, both pieces of jade are in front of you. Since the day they were born, they have been at odds with each other, trying to suppress each other. Now that they've finally met their destined owner, they naturally have to compete. If you take that piece of jade first, it means that the other piece has lost. The sword spirit said. Chu Yang felt faint. It was just two pieces of jade, and they were actually competing for his affection? Beauties all have petty temperaments. Spiritual jade is the same. The sword spirit reminded him. I want to tell you, don't think of taking both of them together. If you do, they'll be unhappy at the same time. Why? Chu Yang felt faint again. He was thinking about this in his heart. Just like two great beauties sharing a husband. The sword spirit grimaced. Even if they can't resist, they'll still feel uncomfortable. Chu Yang fell silent. The sword spirit's words just so happened to hit the sore spot in his heart. Maybe the sword spirit did it on purpose? As Chu Yang weighed his options in this moment, his heart also became somewhat uneasy. As if sensing Chu Yang's hesitation, the aura emitted by the two pieces of jade became stronger and stronger. It was as if the two great beauties were each using the most powerful means in their lives to display their greatest charm, forcing Chu Yang, the bridegroom, to make a decision. Which bride should he enter the bridal chamber first? Chu Yang's expression was complicated as he struggled internally. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth and said, "Now that they're in my family, I have the final say. They want to decide who's the better one, but I won't allow it." Exerting force with both hands, he grabbed the ethereal heavenly crystal and the evil illusionary jade crystal at the same time. At this moment, Chu Yang could clearly feel the resentment in the hearts of the two pieces of jade. He snorted and said, "Do you think you have the final say in my family? Get in." With a whoosh, the two great herbal medicines were thrown into the tribulation dimension together. The sword spirit was dumbfounded. He really couldn't imagine that the sword master would actually still adopt such a hooligan method even though he had already warned him beforehand. Second update, looking for monthly votes. After midnight, it's the Lantern Festival and also the birthday of our book friend, Dancing with the Wind. Let us wish her a happy birthday. Chapter 14:18. The sword spirit arranged for the ethereal heavenly crystal to enter the spiritual spring. In an instant, the water of the spiritual spring surged. The original milky white color instantly merged with the milky white color of the ethereal heavenly crystal that had just been added. It turned into a kind of crystal clear milky white color. This color was like the color of the 10,000-year sky green spiritual milk, but pure. Although it was milky white and not transparent, it strangely gave one a feeling of transparency without any impurities. A faint fragrance wafted over the surface of the spiritual spring, making one feel comfortable all over with just a whiff. Now, as long as he had the fairy seed of life, he could immediately produce something that the fairy race had never dared to obtain, a supreme treasure of heaven and earth that was even better than the spring of life. And this seed of life, Chu Yang was already very confident, because that thing was in Duke Yu's hands. And Duke Yu was Chu Yang's friend. It could be said that he already had it in his hands. With the ethereal heavenly crystal and the evil illusionary jade crystal in his hands, Chu Yang felt a powerful aura suddenly rising from the ground beneath his feet. This aura was different from the sharp murderous aura of the tribulation sword, but it had a kind of thick and solid feeling. There was even a kind of simple and honest feeling to it. Chu Yang was shocked by this feeling. This was definitely the seventh fragment of the tribulation sword. It was just that there was actually such a thing in the land of the tribulation sword that cut through the heavens. Following which, the ground beneath his feet split open and a round, oily object emerged from the ground. Chu Yang couldn't help but widen his eyes. He had obtained the tribulation sword. Before this, he really hadn't seen a fragment emerge on its own. But this thing in front of him had really emerged from below. This was really, the moment this round thing appeared, it immediately attracted the Tribulation Sword's reaction. In an instant, a clear and loud sword sound rang out. Whoosh 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 whoosh, the sword tip, sword edge, sword guard, sword tongue, sword hilt, the segments all shot out at the same time, and sword intent whistled like dragons. They circled above excitedly. And the segment sword was already playing happily with that fellow that had emerged on its own. They flew around, circling back and forth above that fellow, and sword sounds rang out. They seemed to be saying something in their own language. That guy, on the other hand, was somewhat wooden and clumsy. He was like an honest man who was not good with words and was suddenly surrounded by a group of sharp-tongued beauties. He had offended that person. Even after stuttering for a long time, he couldn't let out a single fart. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat, and he grabbed this guy in his hand. The oval stayed in his palm obediently, as if it was waiting for him to inspect it. He was extremely honest and straightforward. A stream of information flowed into Chu Yang's mind. Chu Yang suddenly understood and smacked his lips. Damn it, I was almost fooled by a broken sword. This incomparably honest-looking, simple-minded, and inarticulate fellow was actually Jian Dun. Tribulation Sword's introduction. Sword pommel. The head of the sword hilt, also known as the sword head. There was a round hole on it that could be used to tie a sword tassel. Minitek. Knock, bump, smash. The form of attack was like a person's elbow. It wasn't sharp, but it was powerful. Moreover, it had a balancing effect on the entire sword. Among all sword techniques, the sword pommel could be used. There were very few of them, but once it was used, it would definitely be a fatal blow. The sword pommel was usually hidden at the back of the sword, not revealing anything. It didn't have a sharp sword tip or a sharp sword blade. It was just very plain and simple. It maintained the balance of the entire sword very silently. Moreover, it connected all the brothers together in the final form. But as long as there was a need, it would attack unexpectedly. Moreover, as long as he struck, it would be a fatal blow. In comparison, this was what a real killer looked like. He wouldn't necessarily flee immediately after a single strike, but it would definitely be a fatal blow. Chu Yang held the sword pommel, but his consciousness was quietly communicating with it. Only then did he realize that although this fellow was a little boring on the inside, it was also really wooden and honest. Towards Chu Yang's welcome, joy and comfort, this guy just accepted it submissively, and he even seemed to be a little panicky. Chu Yang couldn't help but laugh. He casually threw the sword pommel into the air and shouted, "Tribulation Sword! Combine!" With a sword chime, the sword hilt flew up first and connected with the sword pommel. The sword tongue was the second to fly up. The tip went deep into the sword hilt and connected with the sword pommel. With a clang, the sword guard went up to protect both sides. The sword tip flew up and got into position with a clang. The sword blade flew up with a whoosh, cold light shining. Finally, the sword tip connected with the sword pommel at a swift and fierce speed. With a boom, a faint air current rose from the Tribulation Sword. At least from the outside, the entire sword was already complete. The entire sword was placed horizontally in midair, awe-inspiring. Even though it was motionless, Chu Yang could feel the spirit of a complete Tribulation Sword that looked down on the world. A realization rose in Chu Yang's heart. Perhaps the current Tribulation Sword was the complete battle form. It was also in a perfect state, because now all the hardware needed for a long sword had already been assembled. The current Tribulation Sword was the original configuration of a newly forged Tribulation Sword. As for the sword tassel and sword soul, they couldn't have been present at that time. The sword tassel couldn't have been present when the sword was forged, and the sword soul couldn't have appeared on a newly forged sword either. Therefore, the current Tribulation Sword was definitely not the most powerful, but it was definitely the purest. Chu Yang slowly reached out his hand. The Tribulation Sword let out a cheerful sword chime and slowly descended, as if someone had gently placed it in Chu Yang's hand. The moment Chu Yang held the sword hilt, The sword intent that was hovering in the air finally descended and attached itself to the tribulation sword. It let out a whining sound as if it was wronged, because it was excluded just now. When the pure tribulation sword was formed, other than the sword tassel and sword soul, nothing else could stay on it. Even the sword intent that was derived from the sword itself couldn't, because if there was a sword intent, someone had to use it and cultivate it to form it. But this wasn't a part of the sword. Chu Yang exhaled softly. The seventh fragment of the tribulation sword was finally in his hands. At the same time, he had some doubts. According to Shui Leihan, the tribulation sword, that powerful person had only given him 8 small metal pieces. As for the sword tassel, it must be the smallest metal piece that was connected to the sword head and some decorations, but since there were 8 of them, how could there be a tribulation? After all, the sword soul was formless and traceless. If he wanted to find it, where would he need to find it? Sword spirit. When the previous tribulation sword masters searched for the tribulation sword, did they all find the sword's soul? Chu Yang asked in a low voice in the tribulation space. The sword spirit's face was originally full of joy. But when he heard Chu Yang's words, he suddenly froze. With his back turned, he said lightly, "Yes. The previous tribulation sword masters all found the sword's soul." When he said this, the expression on his face was very strange. It seemed like he was crying and laughing. It also seemed like he was sad and bitter. But his back was facing Chu Yang, so Chu Yang couldn't see his expression at this moment. Frowning, Chu Yang muttered to himself, "That's really strange. The first 8 fragments are all physical objects. If you look for them, you can find them. But the sword soul, how do you find it?" The sword spirit seemed to smile and said in a low voice, "When you find the 8th fragment, you will know where to go to find the sword soul." Chu Yang nodded silently. The sword spirit perked up and said, "Now, it's the sword technique of the 7th fragment of the tribulation sword. Watch carefully, I will demonstrate it for you here." Chu Yang immediately threw the matter of the sword's soul aside and widened his eyes. The sword spirit floated out, holding the tribulation sword. He stood solemnly. His body looked completely physical at this moment. At this moment, as he stood with the sword in his arms, a majestic aura immediately spread out. A desolate sword intent slowly rose. It gradually turned heavy and mighty. The next moment, the sword spirit thrust his sword forward, but drew an arc in the air. He spun around fiercely, and the tip of the sword flew back from under his arm. His hand grabbed the tip of the sword. As expected, he was using the tip of the sword to attack. But the strangeness of this attack made Chu Yang's scalp tingle a little. Big clump has no edge. This is the name of the sword pommel's first move. The sword pommel looks simple and unadorned, without any edge or edge. But, if it really exerts all its power, it can make the blue sky sink. The sword spirit explained and then launched another move. No edge, no chill, dense sword intent. This is the second move. The sword head and tip are both contained and not released. It seems to be a defensive stance. But the sword intent that can be released from this move is the strongest move of all the sword techniques of the tribulation sword. The sword spirit moved slowly. Look, the third move. Life and death is decided by the sword head. This move means that everyone underestimates the power of the sword head, but those who underestimate it in the beginning will never have the chance to reevaluate it for the rest of their lives, because when they use the sword pommel, they will already be a dead man. Chu Yang watched with rapt attention and nodded slowly. His guess was right. The sword pommel was the most deeply hidden killer of the tribulation sword. The fourth move, only through vicissitudes knows silence. The sword pommel has always been inconspicuous and silent. But there is a saying from the ancients, silence is golden. And it is even more so on the path of martial arts and heavenly Tao. People who were silent usually had a very tenacious temperament. Moreover, silent people make it even harder for the enemy to figure out what is true and what is false. You must know that the more you speak, the more mistakes you make. The sword spirit said, therefore, only after the vicissitudes of the world have changed can one understand the true meaning of silence. But similarly, it is too late. There was some mockery in the sword spirit's voice. Chu Yang mulled over these words. They actually left a lingering fragrance in his mouth. These 4 sword techniques were just like the principles of how one should deal with things. However, Chu Yang really didn't expect that such a sword technique that focused on killing would actually contain such principles. It seemed a little ironic. Moreover, although the sword pommel looked silent and unsophisticated, the 4 sword techniques of the sword pommel were actually all that kind of sinister and vicious killing moves. Every move was so terrifying that even Chu Yang, the master of the tribulation sword, felt goosebumps all over his body. Not to mention the enemy. Chu Yang muttered the 4 sword techniques to himself. Then, he closed his eyes and started to dance with his sword. In an instant, he was intoxicated, unsophisticated and edgeless. The sky wants to sink, no blade, no cold, and the sword intent is dense. Life and death is the sword's sharpest, only through vicissitudes knows silence. Today's first update, I wish everyone a happy Lantern Festival. The second update will be at night. I will be back early to write. I originally wanted to stay up all night to finish writing, but I obviously overestimated my physical strength. Happy Lantern Festival, everyone! Chapter 1419. Chu Yang brandished his sword. For a moment, his heart was filled with pride. Smart kids remember Network's super fast hands. It was as if he had become one with the Calamity Sword in his hand. It was as if at this moment he was the sword and the sword was him. Therefore, even though he didn't use his energy to move the sword, the intricacies of the sword technique flowed through his heart like a clear stream. Nothing was left out. Just as the last bit of the sword technique's intricacies merged into Chu Yang's heart, Chu Yang retracted his sword and stood there. The 28 moves of the Calamity Sword flowed through his heart one by one. Slowly, they connected. Chu Yang's eyes became brighter and brighter. He didn't breathe for a long time. When the last move, only the vicissitudes of life know the silence of the soul, flowed through his heart, Chu Yang suddenly felt a powerful force surging out from the Calamity Sword. It entered his meridians and his dantian. Then, the power of the dragon and wind in his dantian was also triggered. Suddenly, wind and clouds surged in his meridians, and he felt as if he was about to explode. Chu Yang only felt that there was power continuously flowing into his meridians. It was endless, as if there was no end to it. Slowly, his meridians seemed to bulge as if they were about to burst his body. He seemed to have made another breakthrough. But at this time, Chu Yang didn't have time to check what he had broken through. He only felt uncomfortable. He had to stop immediately. But he couldn't stop. The power of the Calamity Sword and the power of the dragon and phoenix energy continued to flow in. Finally, he only felt stars flickering in front of his eyes. He wanted to scream but couldn't. Suddenly, his dantian shook as if it had exploded. Chu Yang let out a low sigh. He fell backward. He fainted. Outside, Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were still unconscious. The others were watching and waiting at the side. Mo Tianji had his hands behind his back. He paced back and forth at the side with a relaxed expression. There was a faint smile at the corners of his mouth. Mo Qingwu's big eyes looked at the place where Chu Yang had disappeared. Then, she turned back and looked at the place again after a while. Finally, she changed her sitting position. She rested her chin on her hands and looked at the spot, waiting for Chu Yang to come out. After a long time, 8 hours had passed. The sky turned from dark to bright. Another night had passed. However, Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were still unconscious and motionless. Everyone else was also immersed in their training. No one noticed anything unusual, so they didn't move. However, Mo Tianji felt somewhat uneasy. His brows slowly furrowed, and he muttered in his heart, "It might take a long time to find the Calamity Sword, but Chu Yang has always done things steadily. But he would never let his brothers wait like this. If it really took a long time, Chu Yang would definitely come out and say something. However, that was not the case now. Inside, did something happen to him? Mo Tianji was worried, but of course, he wouldn't say it out loud. On the contrary, he had to act more and more relaxed to make everyone feel at ease. It was already noon. Chu Yang still didn't come out. Mo Tianji took a deep breath and finally confirmed, something must have happened. Just as he was about to order his brothers to go in and take a look, the moment he opened his mouth, the sky suddenly darkened. Mo Tianji frowned. All the brothers were a little surprised and opened their eyes one after another. Then they saw a scene that they would never forget. They saw a ray of 7-colored light shoot out of the cave like a huge 7-colored dragon. When it passed by everyone, it even circled around them and then rushed out with a whoosh. Yu Lingxue, who was at the entrance of the cave, had been sitting steadily. As long as there were no cries for help from inside, he would stay here and guard. The moment the sky darkened, Yu Lingxue suddenly narrowed his eyes, as if he felt that something shocking was about to happen. Then he saw a ray of 7-colored light snaking out of the ground like a dragon. Yu Lingxue's body flashed, and that ray of light rushed out of the cave and rushed into the dark sky. One must know that the real time now was noon. But the fact that the sky darkened strangely was already a great wonder in the world. At this moment, it was as if a god had set off fireworks, and a ray of 7-colored light suddenly shot out. The ray of 7-colored light rushed into the sky and went straight into the clouds. As it went higher and higher, it also became bigger and bigger. Gradually, the entire sky within a radius of millions of miles became 7-colored. A kind of dreamy music that didn't seem to exist suddenly sounded. Everyone who heard it couldn't tell at all whether this wonderful music came from their own hearts or from the sky. Or from the sky. They couldn't explain it, and even felt like they were dreaming. The 7-colored sky rolled and then slowly turned into 7 rays of light. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. The 7 colors were separated by the purest color. Each ray was 1,000 feet wide and 10,000 feet long, and they stretched across the sky. In the separated space, one could see that the sky was still pitch black. The 7 rays of light stood majestically between heaven and earth. After a while, they slowly started to move. The red light flashed and turned into a sharp tip, like the tip of a sword. It was just that compared to a normal sword, it was billions of times bigger. Then, a green sword tip, a blue sword blade, an orange sword guard, a green sword hilt, a purple sword tongue, and a yellow sword hilt. It actually re-evolved the process of the formation of the Calamity Sword in the sky. At this moment, everyone on the continent looked up and stared with wide eyes. There was no information or hint as to what kind of sword this was, but everyone understood one thing. This sword was the Calamity Sword. It was the master of the sky. The Calamity Sword was finally formed, and it slowly turned in a circle in the sky. Then, the tip of the sword pointed to the sky, and the sword hilt pointed to the ground. It stood in the dark sky like a blazing sun, brilliant and resplendent. After pausing for a moment, the sword suddenly moved slowly, faster and faster, heading straight for the endless sky. As it rose, its speed became faster and faster. Finally, it came into contact with the darkness in the sky. Then, the Calamity Sword didn't stop at all. It tore through the darkness like it was rotten wood, and went straight up. Everywhere it passed, the darkness in the sky was torn apart and slowly scattered in all directions. The Calamity Sword rose to an unknown height in the sky. Heaven and earth had returned to normal. The sky was clear and the sun was bright. However, the Calamity Sword was still flying up, and finally, it slowly disappeared into the void. This time, there weren't any big words appearing in the sky like the previous times. Everything was carried out in silence. The entire process was like a silent pantomime, but everyone understood what it meant. When the Calamity Sword appeared, who could fight against it? When the Calamity Sword appeared, it destroyed everything. When the Calamity Sword appeared, it cut through the sky and earth. Yes, there was no need for any explanation. Everyone understood that. Sorry for the late update. Back home. After dinner, at 10:30 p.m., I put on a coat and went to the roof. I sat there and watched the fireworks. The entire town was setting off fireworks, and the sky was bright and blurry. The rumbling sounds never stopped. In the darkness, I sat there alone and watched quietly. That kind of feeling was very strange. It truly felt like an ethereal dream. I sat there for almost 3 hours, but I still wanted more. Chapter 1420. The Calamity Sword has finally taken shape again. Yu Lingxue stood up, dressed in white. He looked at the sky with a deep gaze. No one knew what he was thinking about. Smart kids remember network super fast hands. I still remember the last time when the Calamity Sword took shape. Although it was huge, it couldn't be compared to this time. Yu Lingxue's gaze was a little surprised. Could it be that the Calamity Sword is different this time? Or, is the sword master different from usual? Yu Lingxue was really curious. 10,000 years ago, when the Calamity Sword took shape for the 8th time, Yu Lingxue already had a considerable cultivation. The memory of that day was still fresh in his mind. That time, the Calamity Sword only appeared abruptly in the dark. There was only one sword, and it ended after a few flashes. But this time, it appeared in broad daylight. Strangely, the world suddenly turned into night. It cut through the darkness of heaven and earth, and then it went all the way up and disappeared into the clouds. Everyone had a feeling that when the Calamity Sword broke through the clouds and reached the world that no one could see, it could still dominate everything. Law Enforcement City. The Dharma Supreme looked at the sky, his expression gloomy and dejected. Once again, the Calamity Sword took shape. His expression was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. After a while, he flicked his black robe and turned around. He said calmly, "I'm going out. Send the order for the 2 stars to accompany me." Then he walked down, his black robe fluttering, revealing a heavy heart. At this moment, different strong reactions were aroused in the great clans. For a moment, the great clans were in a state of panic. The elder masters were even more shocked. A few of them had already started to send messages. They pitted the other great clans. There were even a few who set off immediately after sending the message. Shao clan. Yi Qinshan stood with an old man with white hair and beard. Both of them looked rather grim. "Brother Qinyu, looks like the heavens have decided? If we want to change, I'm afraid." Yi Qinshan came to the Shao clan half a month ago. The person beside him was, of course, the founder of the Shao clan, Shao Qinyu. Shao Qinyu frowned. He said, "No matter what, we have to struggle for a while. Even if Heaven's will has already decided, we still can't just sit there and wait for death." He raised his white eyebrows and sneered, "Besides, in the past 10,000 years, although I have never heard that the Master of Calamity Sword can be replaced, I have never heard that it can't be done." "Replace?" Yi Qinshan's eyes lit up. Shao Qinyu took a deep breath and said, "However, I have been feeling uneasy these past few days. I originally thought that something had happened to second brother. Now it seems like it's because of the Calamity Sword Master." Yi Qinshan replied, "Oh? Morning Thunder? Where did he go? I haven't seen him for the past few days." Shao Qinyu said indifferently, "I sent him to do something that concerns the life and death of the clan. When he returns, Brother Yi will definitely know." Yi Qinshan nodded and said, "Inform the others. Based on the current situation, I'm afraid our 7 great clans will have to join forces." Shao Qinyu's face darkened. He nodded slowly. "It's just a pity that the Li clan betrayed us and the Lan clans suffered a calamity of annihilation." Yi Qinshan heaved a long sigh. To think that the Khanate formation of the great clans would have already fallen apart before it had even begun. Shao Qinyu gave a long sigh. In the northwest region, Diwu Qingru stared blankly at the phenomenon in the sky. His face was rather pale. His right hand was clenched into a fist so tightly that his knuckles were actually a little white. He murmured, "Is this Chu Yang's idea? Or that Calamity Sword Master's idea? How could it be?" According to Diwu Qingrou's guess, he was 100% sure that after Chu Yang and the others rose above the storm in the south, their next destination would definitely be the northwest. The Li clan battlefield in the northwest was the key to the Calamity Sword Master stirring up chaos in the world. There was no way they wouldn't come. And once they came, it would be beneficial for Diwu Qingru to build up his strength. Borrowing strength to fight strength, restraining each other, making use of the Li clan as a big piece of cake to make the 8 great clans unite against a common enemy. Then he would be able to make plans leisurely. Diwu Qingru even had a thorough plan for how he would operate after they came. But he didn't expect that when they didn't come and the clans were so anxious to start a war, Diwu Qingru had no choice but to arrange for an attack, making use of one small battle after another to stall for time. The battles commanded by Diwu Qingru were, of course, always victorious. It was precisely because of this that the clans relied on him more and more. And Diwu Qingru's own prestige also rose with the tide. But all of this wasn't what Diwu Qingru wanted. On the one hand, he had to maintain and not let the Li clan suffer a destructive blow. On the other hand, he had to maintain his winning record. He tried his best to stall for time and wait for Chu Yang and the others to come and fight with him. But he didn't expect that the Calamity Sword Master didn't come, but he received news that the Calamity Sword Master had obtained the 7th fragment of the Calamity Sword. It turned out that they didn't come this way at all. Diwu Qingru's wishful thinking suddenly fell through. This made him very disappointed. If it was Chu Yang's decision, then it doesn't seem like Chu Yang's temperament. If it was that Calamity Sword Master's decision, isn't it a little too careless of the big picture? What exactly is going on? Diwu Qingru couldn't figure it out. But he didn't know that this was neither Chu Yang's decision nor Mo Tianji's decision. It was a completely unexpected event that happened all of a sudden. Rui Badong was in danger and the nirvana of the phoenix attracted Chu Yang and the others who were originally about to reach the northwest to the southeast. And the matter of the traitor led Chu Yang back home. After returning home, he received news of the dragon and phoenix bones, as well as news of the 7th Tribulation Sword. Since it was so close, Chu Yang naturally had to obtain the Tribulation Sword first. So, this was a series of causes and effects, but it had nothing to do with the war in the northwest. No wonder Diwu Qingru couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he scratched his head. But in the current situation, Diwu Qingru had to hold on. He couldn't let the Li clan be destroyed, and he couldn't let himself suffer losses in this aspect. This required methods and schemes. Diwu Qingru took 2 steps and murmured, "Looks like I have to take measures." His eyes flashed coldly. "Chu Yang, I'll fight for another half a month's time. If you don't come in half a month's time, can only..." He suddenly turned around and strode away. When Chu Yang woke up from his coma, he found that his body was as light as a feather. All the impurities in his body had disappeared. Even he had a clear feeling of being reborn. He even had a clear feeling, the him just now was already dead. And the him who stood up now was the reborn him. He was a different person from the him just now. This feeling was strange and clear. This strange feeling even made Chu Yang search under his body nervously to see if there was any corpse of his, to make sure that he wasn't a soul after death. After searching one round, he naturally didn't find anything. Raising his chi slightly, Chu Yang found that the layered heaven divine technique in his body was flowing smoothly like a trickle. Everywhere it passed, there was no obstruction at all. He couldn't help but be shocked. Before this, even if he used all his strength, the layered heaven divine technique, it might not even be able to complete one cycle. But now, it could already operate on its own, although it was a little thinner. But after all, it had already formed a large-scale cycle. Such a big change actually happened when he was in a coma? He hurriedly checked his dantian and couldn't help but be stunned again. The primordial real silk in his dantian had actually doubled. And even more. Originally, there were only slightly more than 200, but now, there were actually more than 500. Moreover, there was still a lot of dense purple aura entwining around, as if constantly catalyzing the formation. This is the benefit of the formation of your tribulation sword. The sword spirit said in the tribulation space, the formation of the tribulation sword, and this time, it came out of seclusion in the most perfect state. The benefits given to you are also massive. It is the accumulation of 10,000 years, and it has been channeled into your dantian all at once. If not for the fact that your current body can't take it at all and most of it has entered the tribulation space, you would have thousands of primordial real silk by now. And you can also reach the supreme grade now. But now, you've only reached the supreme grade, surpassing the boundary between immortal and mortal. That's all. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. The sword spirit was indeed the sword spirit. His tone was really fucking big. Just surpassing the boundary between immortal and mortal? And that's all? That's all? Other than that, a lot of the dragon and phoenix essence in your body has also been activated. The sword spirit said, but this kind of situation has never happened before. Chu Yang nodded. I see. The sword spirit said, and this time, the benefit of the tribulation sword is not you, but everyone around you. Under normal circumstances, it's the tribulation. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. A conflicted look came over the sword spirit's face. But right now, there are 10 people outside. And you, the tribulation has only confirmed 8. Chu Yang's eyes widened. Huh. And among the 10 people, 2 of them are women. The sword spirit's expression became even more conflicted. Chu Yang opened his mouth. Huh, and 2 of them have the same surname? The sword spirit sighed. Chu Yang, huh? So, it's a mess now. The sword spirit rolled his eyes. I'll go out and take a look. Chu Yang walked out anxiously. The sword spirit went back into hiding tactfully. This time, when the tribulation sword was formed, the benefits that the sword spirit received were also unprecedentedly huge. At this moment, he could completely take shape and appear in the air. Whether it was day or night, it no longer had any effect on him. The sword spirit was also anxious to go back and digest the results this time, at this moment, outside. Luo Kadi was making a fuss. Today's first update. Begging for monthly votes. Gee, second thing. Previously, I said that it would explode after the festival, so it will explode today and tomorrow. Gee, third thing. Today is my mother's birthday, so it will explode a little later. But since I promised everyone that it would explode, no matter how late it is, it will explode at least 3 updates. Gee, the fourth thing. I bought a set of clothes and a bracelet for my mother. My mother was very happy and so was I. So the fourth thing is, I am very happy. Because my happiness comes from your support, I would like to invite you all to share my happiness. Thank you for your support and for making me happy. Of course, I will not forget the person who dug the well. Naturally, I will update more and work harder to make all of you happy. So, from today onwards, the frequency of the eruptions will become very frequent. There will be frequent eruptions. So, begging for monthly votes. Chapter 1421. The reason was because of GMO Smart Kids Remember Network super fast hands. After realizing that there was nothing wrong, Luo Kadi moved closer to GMO. Great Master G. That thing you mentioned, what's going on? GMO pursed his lips and looked up. What do you mean by that thing? Nothing. Luo Kadi almost cried. Great Master? You're my dear Great Master, GMO snorted and rolled his eyes. Even if I don't tell him, he'll find out sooner or later. So, I might as well tell him. Then, I can still have some fun with him. Therefore, he put on an enigmatic look and said, Do you want to thoroughly improve our foundation? Luo Kadi's eyes widened and he nodded vigorously like a chicken pecking at rice. Do you want to be as arrogant as Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang? He nodded vigorously. Do you want to train crazily and cry secretly after your brother's breakthrough? He shook his head vigorously. There's a way now. What way? You want to know? You really want to know? Are you sure you want to know? Luo Kadi was going crazy. He grabbed Jimo's collar. Say it, or not. Jimo's face was calm. You want to know? At this moment, not only Luo Kadi, even Mo Tianji, who had such good self-restraint, wanted to grab GMO and beat him up. This guy didn't leave people hanging like this. The veins on Luo Kadi's face were bulging. If he didn't say it, he would really die. If you don't say it, I don't want to live anymore. I'll beat you to death. Luo Kadi patted his butt with one hand and pulled his hair with the other. He was going crazy. I'll say it. It's not a big deal. Look at how anxious you are. GMO said disdainfully. You bastard. You dig out food from your own ass to eat. Luo Kadi shouted loudly. Only after he had shouted the second half of his sentence did he realize that GMO had agreed. So, he immediately changed his words. Third brother G, Great Master G, What GMO was most afraid of now was that someone would mention this matter. He immediately flew into a rage. I won't talk about it anymore. Luo Kadi suddenly felt miserable. He grabbed his own mouth and fiercely slapped it. Then he hugged Jimo's thigh and hastily explained, Third brother G, Great Master, Grandfather? I'm not scolding you. I'm really not scolding you. I'm just being careless for a moment. Really, you're not the only one who has dug out things from his own ass to eat, right? Look at my mouth. I'm talking about the heavy pill in my ass. My mouth is incurable. What I meant was what did I say? Luo Kadi was so anxious that white foam was coming out of the corner of his mouth. GMO, on the other hand, was getting more and more furious. Finally, he roared, You bastard! Shut up! The people around him were already rocking back and forth with laughter. These two clowns were really, at this moment, the rainbow-colored true chi bypassed everyone, and everyone was stunned at the same time. Immediately after, everyone felt their cultivation base increase rapidly. In that instant, he felt as if his body was about to explode. GMO turned pale with fright. Luo Kadi, I'm talking about when you break through to Supreme Martial Artist grade. The boundary between immortal and mortal can change one's aptitude, but you must remember your own goal. GMO could clearly feel it. Now, this inexplicable increase in cultivation base would probably cause Luo Kadi and himself to advance directly. He hurriedly spilled the beans from a bamboo tube. After all, after the averaging of the dragon and phoenix essence just now, the brothers' cultivation base was uniformly set at 4th grade Supreme Martial Artist. Dong Wuxiang and Rui Budong, who had reached 5th grade Supreme Martial Artist first, were forcefully pulled down by the averaging, and the brothers who were originally at 2nd grade or 3rd grade Supreme Martial Artist all became 4th grade Supreme Martial Artists. Then, they could start the distribution of the dragon and phoenix essence. In this way, Dong Wuxiang and Rui Budong suffered a great loss, but the others benefited greatly. Luo Kadi's face and neck were red, and he endured the discomfort in his body. Damn you! Why didn't you say so earlier? Old. Feeling that his meridians were boiling as if they were about to explode, he hurriedly sat down cross-legged and used all his strength to guide the digestion of the cultivation base in his body. Ao Xieyun and Rui Budong, who were in a coma, also woke up abruptly. The moment they woke up, they immediately felt that something was wrong. The two of them didn't even know what was going on. They each cried out, "Oh my God," and hurriedly channeled their energy to guide the energy. Gu Duxing, Mo Tianji, Mo Lei, Mo Qingwu and the others also sat down one after another, guiding this inexplicable energy through their meridians. Right at this moment, Chu Yang came out of the cave anxiously. When he came out, he saw everyone sitting cross-legged and channeling their energy. Everyone's current situation was exactly the same as his before. It looked like the benefits of the Calamity Sword had already been evenly distributed. The Sword Master's appearance didn't attract anyone's attention. Even the most cautious Mo Tianji and Mo Qingwu, who was most concerned about whether Chu Yang came out or not, didn't sense Chu Yang's arrival at this moment. Because the boiling energy in their bodies had already become the complete dominant force. Chu Yang cautiously paid attention to the changes in everyone. Feeling the rise of everyone's aura, he still felt a little emotional. Although the brothers had forcefully used the dragon and phoenix essence to make an average before this, at this moment, differences were once again revealed. In the end, everyone was different from one another. Just like wealth, when the world was created, if the heavens were to equip everyone with a copper coin, as long as this copper coin started to flow, there would be rapid changes. Many people's copper coins would disappear in the blink of an eye, but many people's copper coins would continue to increase. This was really unfair. Just like this moment. Right now, the one with the greatest change in cultivation wasn't Ao Xie, Yun Rui Budong, Gu Duxing and Dong Wuxiang, but Mo Qingwu. This little girl was truly displaying the power of her freakish physique at this moment. The spiritual energy in the world swarmed over, complementing the benefits in her body like raging waves, breaking through all the obstacles, killing generals and capturing flags, pushing forward unstoppably. Chu Yang could feel that the cultivation in her body started to push forward from 4th grade supreme martial artist, rising steadily step by step. Slowly, it reached 4th grade supreme martial artist, high-level supreme martial artist, peak-level supreme martial artist, and then stopped at the bottleneck of 5th grade for only a moment before her whole body shook. She broke through the bottleneck and reached the beginner 5th grade supreme martial artist, and then pushed forward fiercely. Mo Qingwu's speed actually surpassed Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang, and even surpassed Ao Xie Yun and Rui Budong of the Dragon and Phoenix races. Gu Duxing's speed was second only to Mo Qingwu among the 10 people. And Gu Duxing's power. It was advancing at an unprecedented sharp speed. Even when cultivating, it was also like a sword piercing forward with an indomitable will. Not long after Mo Qingwu reached 5th grade supreme martial artist, Gu Duxing also reached this position. And Dong Wushang's breakthrough was different from Gu Duxing's. Dong Wushang's breakthrough was first to accumulate power, and then, with an earth-shattering speed, a gap suddenly appeared in the essence in his body like the Milky Way. It rushed over very vigorously. That was a kind of resolute and unstoppable attitude. The 4th was Ao Xie Yun and Rui Budong. The two of them advanced at almost the same speed, one like a divine dragon soaring, flying forward, the other like a phoenix spreading its wings, flying all the way. Then it was Xie Danqiong's turn. After Xie Danqiong, it was Mo Tianji. Then it was Mo Lei. Last in line were Mo and Luo Kadi. The two of them were also cultivating and breaking through very quickly. But compared to the first 8 people, they were clearly inferior. Feeling all this, Chu Yang suddenly thought of the 12 influential people in the 3 heavens in his previous life. Black Demon, Dark Bamboo, Lone Guest, Poison Spirit, Tianji, Li Xiongtu, Black Saber, Qian Hao, Duke Xie, Meng Luo, Viburnum, Tianru. Now, among these 12 people, Black Demon, Gudu, Tianji, Black Saber and Duke Xie were all in front of him. Although their speed differed, overall, it was about the same. In his previous life, Mo and Luo Kadi were not selected. At this moment, it seemed that this ranking in his previous life was still reasonable. Compared to these 12 people, Mo and Luo Kadi's aptitude was really slightly inferior. Chu Yang frowned and thought to himself, this time, I must succeed. In the tribulation space, Chu Yang had already prepared 2 sets of blooming and fading flowers and 2 sets of heavenly moonlight. The blooming and fading flowers and heavenly moonlight complemented each other and could allow people who were breaking through the boundary between immortal and mortal to be reborn. At the very least, it could also improve people's aptitude. This effect was what the sword spirit said. Now, Chu Yang was secretly praying in his heart. This theory must work. Just as the other 8 people broke through to supreme martial artist level, Mo and Luo Kadi were also sweating. Their thoughts were almost chaotic as they tried to break through the bottleneck of supreme martial artist level. Mo's whole body was covered in blood as if it was going to spurt out from the surface of his skin. But with an almost stubborn persistence, he shouted, "Change aptitude." On the other side, Luo Kadi could no longer speak, but he was still trying his best to persevere. Time and time again, that kind of pain like death by 1,000 cuts couldn't change his determination at all. Improve aptitude. Chu Yang's heart was a little hot. This was Mo and Luo Kadi's biggest worry. But aptitude was innate. How could it be easy to change it? Although they worked hard, although they desperately wanted to change, but this kind of change in aptitude was not something that could be done with hard work. If it wasn't for the coincidence that it became a tribulation, Mo and Luo Kadi might. Feeling Mo and Luo Kadi's roars in their hearts, feeling the two of them failing to break through to supreme martial artist level time and time again, every failure was as painful as being pierced by thousands of arrows and being dismembered by 1,000 cuts. But the two of them still rushed forward with determination. I don't want to be left behind by my brothers. I don't want to be a burden. I also want my brothers to be proud of me. Chu Yang's eyes were slightly hot. With a thought and a command, The blooming and fading flowers and heavenly moonlight started to merge in the tribulation space. The heavenly moonlight suddenly enveloped a patch of blooming and fading flowers. Then, the heavenly moonlight shrunk, and the blooming and fading flowers also slowly became smaller. Gradually, the heavenly moonlight disappeared, and so did the blooming and fading flowers. In the intertwined space, two clear water droplets floated in the air, spinning and reflecting thousands of rays of light. Seeking votes. GRQ. Chapter 1422. Just as GMO and Luo Kudi were about to attack again, Chu Yang picked up two water droplets with lightning speed. He took them out of the tribulation space and shook his hand. Smart Kids Remember Network's super fast hands. One water droplet fell into GMO's mouth, and the other one fell into Luo Kudi's mouth. Chu Yang could clearly see that 1/3 of the water droplet had already evaporated in this short period of time from when he had attacked to when the two of them had opened their mouths. No wonder Sword Spirit said that this thing can't be taken out. Chu Yang was a little scared. It's just that so much evaporated in such a short period of time. Wouldn't there be nothing left if I took it out like this? GMO and Luo Kudi had reached the final juncture. If they couldn't break through this time, their meridians, which were already full of scars, would fall apart in an instant. But the two didn't have the slightest intention of giving up. Both of them had a stubborn belief. Such a heaven-sent opportunity. Such a heaven-sent favor. If we can't break through and change our aptitude, then we'll just die here. At this moment, they suddenly felt a burst of coolness in their blurred senses. Then, they felt that a thin crack had suddenly appeared in the solid bottleneck. The two of them were overjoyed. They rushed over at the same time. There was a loud boom. Their bodies trembled at the same time. Blood spurted out of their 7 apertures. Some of the pores on their bodies also spurted out a thin mist of blood. But they had finally broken through this hurdle. Then, the two of them followed what they had said before. They wanted to change, but they didn't know how to change. They just urged their martial power and rushed forward. Then, the two of them felt a burst of coolness enter their bodies at the same time. The moment it spread throughout their bodies, this coolness suddenly turned into a boundless raging fire. It swallowed all of their meridians from top to bottom. In an instant, their internal organs were also affected. The two of them let out a hoarse scream at the same time. Blood spurted out of their mouths like crazy. They fainted. Gu Duxing and the others had already woken up. They saw Chu Yang standing beside GMO and Luo Kudi. They were about to speak when Chu Yang raised his finger to stop them. Suddenly, they saw the two of them vomiting blood as if they wanted to vomit all the blood in their bodies. They were all shocked. Chu Yang stretched out his hand to stop everyone. He whispered, "Don't move. They're undergoing a rebirth." Oh! Gu Duxing and the others immediately understood. They also saw Chu Yang throw a drop of something strange into their mouths. They all understood that the two of them were undergoing a rebirth this time. It must have a lot to do with Chu Yang. Chu's voice was serious. He lowered his voice and said, "This time, they were reborn when GMO and Luo Kudi broke through the supreme grade and crossed the boundary between immortal and mortal. Their own efforts. They did it themselves to do it. Do you understand? Yang's twos to go? To die's to twos to die to die." All the brothers nodded in unison. They understood Chu Yang's good intentions. Their Yang's This was enough to make GMO and Luo Kudi's self-confidence explode from now on. To die to die to die to die's to die. To be to their heavens. Kutu's to die. With such a mindset, the progress of the two of them was terrifying. Cultivation? To cultivate? To cultivate? Their mentality. If their mentality was unstable, it would be easy for them to go berserk. But with such strong confidence, GMO and Luo Kudi didn't have to worry about anything. They just had to charge forward. Because I'm invincible. Dong Wuxiang was the only one who was confused. He scratched his head and asked, "Why?" Just as he said it, Oli pinched his waist and spun him around. "You pighead! Shut up!" Dong Wuxiang's scream was like a cow's roar. But he didn't dare to say anything more. Emole's lips opened and closed, but she was explaining to him telepathically. After a long explanation, Dong Wuxiang's rough face finally showed a look of realization. He slapped his thigh and said, "I see. Boss is so thoughtful." Before he finished, her reached out and twisted him again. "You're still talking." "Ouch," Dong Wuxiang suddenly howled. He was in so much pain that he sucked in cold air and shivered all over. At this moment, Luo Kadi woke up. He opened his eyes in a daze. "Brother Dong?" Dong Wuxiang endured the pain and flashed a smile. "What's wrong?" Luo Kadi said with dissatisfaction, "Why are you stealing my business?" Dong Wuxiang was speechless. GMO also woke up. When he woke up, he realized that he was different. A feeling of being reborn filled his heart, and he couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Motherfucker, motherfucker, 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 motherfucker." She was so excited that her speech was incoherent. She hugged Luo Kadi, and the two of them hugged each other. They laughed and shouted at the same time. Instantly, the sound of dog ant and rang out incessantly. She laughed jubilantly as tears streamed down her face. Finally, he was free from his shackles. Although they didn't know how effective it would be, it was certain that they would be reborn. This was something that both of them could feel. The two laughed and cried at the same time. This made Chu Yang and the others somewhat unable to react. They should have been happy for the two of them, giving their blessings and laughing together. But when they saw the two of them crying, they couldn't help but feel sad. Everyone knew how much pressure and pain GMO and Luo Kadi had felt before they reached this day. GMO and Luo Kadi only regained their composure after a long time. They turned to look at their brothers and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. But how thick-skinned were these two people? They quickly adjusted their mentality. Wiping away their tears, GMO laughed and said, "Everyone has broken through, right?" At Gu Du Xing and the others sighed. Luo Kadi proudly puffed out his chest. "I have also broken through." Everyone was stunned. Very surprised, right? GMO proudly strode like a cat in front of everyone. He shook his butt and said, "Big brother has also broken through." "So what?" "I have broken through." "So what?" "I have broken through, so what?" Surprised, right? Surprised, right? Unbelievable, right? Unimaginable, right? But Big Brother has broken through, what? "Let's go out, it's my treat." Luo Kadi roared, his heroism reaching the clouds. "Eat whatever you want. Even if you want to eat dragon's liver and phoenix's gallbladder, I will immediately skin Ao Xieyun and Rue Badong." Everyone lowered their heads. These two fellows were obviously so excited that they didn't know what to say. "The two of you are only at the beginner level, but Ao Xieyun and Rue Badong are already at the peak, as expected." The next moment, Ao Xieyun and Rue Badong roared and pounced forward. Mo Tianji nodded lightly. "Come, let's go out." The brothers tacitly followed behind Chu Yang and Mo Tianji, walking out in a single file. They didn't even turn back, even though there were two people behind them begging for mercy at the top of their lungs. As if they didn't hear anything, Yu Lingxue was shocked. He remembered very clearly that when Chu Yang and the others entered this mine, their strength was uneven. Some were 5th grade, some were 4th grade, some were 3rd grade, some were 2nd grade, but those who came out now, they were all of the same grade. "Hiss!" Yu Lingxue gasped and said somewhat stutteringly, "All of you have broken through?" Chu Yang nodded. "All of you are of the same grade?" Yu Lingxue only felt that his brain was dizzy. Even the last two people who came out with bruises all over their faces. They were also supreme martial artists. He couldn't help but be shocked. "All of you have crossed the boundary between immortal and mortal?" "Uh-huh," the brothers nodded. Yu Lingxue was stunned. As a 2nd grade supreme martial artist, he naturally understood. The boundary between immortal and mortal was so difficult to cross. How many amazing geniuses had been cultivating at lightning speed, but they were stuck between the 5th grades, unable to advance even an inch in their lives. Even himself and Feng Yuro. When they tried to break through the boundary between immortal and mortal back then, With the help of a powerful technique like moon breeze as one, they still cultivated for as long as 30 years before they succeeded in breaking through. It was already considered fast back then. But today, his worldview was completely turned upside down. What kind of help was a breakthrough in 30 years? Look at these 11 people in front of him. They all broke through to supreme martial artists in just half a month. And they didn't start from the peak of 5th grade, some even started from 1st grade supreme martial artists. For example, Jianghu. Some started from 2nd grade, for example, GMO, Luo Kadi and Mo Tianji. Some started from 3rd grade, for example, Ao Shiyun and Xie Danqiong. Some started from 4th grade. For example, Chu Yang and Gu Duxing. Some started from 5th grade, for example, Dong Wushang, Rui Badong and Mo Lei. And now, all of them had reached the peak of 5th grade. Yu Lingxue was on the verge of breaking down, and 2 or 3 of them had reached the peak of 5th grade, or even the peak of 5th grade. They reached the peak right after breaking through? Yu Lingxue suddenly wanted to go into the mine to take a look. Damn it, could there be a deity inside? Just pointing at someone and they would break through? While Yu Lingxue was in a daze. Let's hurry back. Time is of the essence. We need to settle things here as soon as possible and then move to the northwest. Chu Yang said, "That's right. Now, that traitor is already useless." Mo Tianji agreed and said, "It is indeed time to get rid of him." Only Mo Tianji was still thinking about the traitor at such a time. Chu Yang nodded silently. The traitor? As long as they found out, they would hand it over to the clan to deal with. As a junior himself, this kind of extermination, he really couldn't do it. The brothers set off together with Yu Lingxue. Chu Yang, Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong stayed at the back. When they saw that everyone had gone far away, they activated their divine techniques and grabbed the entire mountain range where the mine was. Then, with a flip of their palms, they landed on the ground. Then, with continuous movements of both hands, there were continuous rumbling sounds. The few small mountains nearby were transported over by Chu Yang and completely covered above. May the dragon and phoenix elders below rest in peace. I hope that from now on, no one will disturb your peace for all eternity. Chu Yang lowered his head and said quietly. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong knelt down and kowtowed 3 times to express their gratitude and farewell to the dragon and phoenix elders. Then, the 3 of them turned and chased after them. The moment he turned his head, Chu Yang's body shook. Ao Shiyun asked, "Boss, what's wrong?" Chu Yang said, "Nothing." Moving, the 3 of them left quickly. At that moment, Chu Yang clearly heard a voice that seemed to ring from the bottom of his heart. It said slowly, "Calamity Sword, 8th Fragment, City of Fairies. 3rd update, please vote." Cough, today is my mother's birthday. I didn't expect my mother-in-law to come too. When she saw the birthday present I bought for my mother, she said bitterly, "The gold bracelet looks better." Cough, cough, for my mother-in-law's birthday last year, I bought her a silver one. I feel that I'm going to be in trouble, as if a storm is brewing. Chapter 1423. Chu Yang was startled. City of Fairies? Where was the City of Fairies? He had obtained the 7th fragment of the Calamity Sword from the dragon and Phoenix brings prosperity. He had also brought out the location of the 8th fragment, which was related to the fairy race. Smart kids remember Network's super fast hands, sword spirit. Where did the previous owners of the Calamity Sword get their swords from? Could it be from the dragon and Phoenix brings prosperity or the City of Fairies? Chu Yang asked. How is that possible? The sword spirit smiled. You are the only one who has such luck since ancient times. The previous owners of the Calamity Sword didn't even have any rare herbs. Chu Yang replied with an "oh" and asked, "Then do you know where the City of Fairies is?" The sword spirit smiled helplessly. How would I know? But, if you want to know, there is one person who definitely knows where the City of Fairies is. And this person will be happy to bring you there. Chu Yang suddenly realized. Dukyu. That's right. The sword spirit said, in this world, only Dukyu knows and can find the City of Fairies. Chu Yang nodded silently. Duke, you should have come up the moment the heavens opened. But why was there no news of him until now? Where did he go? After sorting out his emotions, Chu Yang looked at Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong, who had been waiting for a long time. Facing their concerned gazes, he smiled warmly. It's okay. Let's go. Another 2 days later, Chu Yang galloped on his horse. The wind that came against him was already somewhat chilly. It was already the 5th day since he left the Chu clan. He was already close to the river and about to leave the southeast. Thinking of his grandfather's sad expression when he talked about the traitor when he returned to the clan, he sighed. Chu Feilong's wife, Madame Wei. He had committed suicide the moment Chu Yang and the others returned home. She left behind a few words, half in the night, half surnamed Chu. There are joys and laughter in the morning, and bitterness in the evening. I want to be filial and merciful, but I can't help it. One is for the kindness of raising me, the other is for the bloodline of my husband. Half my life is melancholy and half laughter, a lifetime of conflict and loneliness. Now that I am gone, is there a husband in the spring? The guilty Madame Wei asks for forgiveness. I ask the Chu clan to take pity on my Yun, and take care of him on account that he is of the Chu bloodline. There is no need for glory and splendor. There is no need for riches and honor. I don't need to use force to live a peaceful life. That is my greatest wish. From this last poem, one could see the woman's conflicted feelings. She might be vicious. Perhaps it was sinister. Perhaps it was unforgivable, but this life was full of contradictions. It was painful. One was for the grace of raising her, and the other was for the bloodline of her husband. The kindness of the Yi clan's upbringing, the kinship of the Chu clan's bloodline. As for the words half a lifetime of melancholy, half a lifetime of laughter, a lifetime of conflict, a lifetime of loneliness, it made one's heart ache even more. After all, she was just a tool used by the Yi clan to deal with other clans. And the Yi clan had buried this chess piece. It was to control the Chu clan and deal with the Shao clan. But perhaps it was due to good luck or some other reason, but after so many years, he still failed on the verge of success. Now that the bones have turned into a breeze, is there a man in the spring? Chu Yang sighed. She still had feelings for Chu Feilong. On this trip to the Yellow Springs, he was still thinking about whether he could find Chu Feilong, but, so what if he found it? Chu Yang really couldn't comment on this woman. Brother Chu Yang, what are you sighing about? Mo Qingwu was dressed in red, riding on the same horse with Chu Yang. Her soft hair fluttered on Chu Yang's face, as if it wanted to tickle Chu Yang's heart. Hearing Chu Yang's sigh, she turned her head slightly and asked. Chu Yang took a breath and said in a low voice, I'm thinking that in this world, there are so many contradictions. Good and bad, loyal and treacherous, straight and crooked, right and wrong. The boundaries of these are really hard to describe. Mo Qingwu said softly, yes? Some things, if explained logically, don't make sense. Chu Yang nodded and said, yes, in this world there are people first, then there are reasons. Reasons are created by people. How can they explain the human heart to the fullest? Mo Qingwu said in a low voice, yes, just like the many heartless men in this world. It's really hard to understand and explain. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat and he asked, Mo Qingwu looked back and smiled, saying, of course I'm not talking about you. Chu Yang smiled wryly. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. Mo Qingwu laughed and said, Chu Yang, I'm now at the peak of supreme martial artist? Chu Yang was confused. Mo Qingwu wrinkled her nose and said, in the future, no matter what you do, I can help you. No matter where you go, I can accompany you. Chu Yang felt the friendship in Mo Qingwu's words and couldn't help but sigh. No matter where I go, you can accompany me, so don't think of leaving me behind again. Mo Qingwu tilted her head and smiled softly. I want to be with you, in life and death. As if struck by lightning, Chu Yang's body trembled violently. His eyes widened and he looked at Mo Qingwu with some horror. Mo Qingwu's clear eyes looked at him. Then, she gently avoided his gaze and looked to the side. With a gentle smile, she said, Chu Yang, that dream, I've reached the end. Suddenly, Chu Yang's mind was struck by lightning, making him dizzy. His breathing quickened and his heart beat like a drum. He opened his mouth and his lips were so dry that they were about to crack. He said, "What dream reached the end?" The autumn wind blew in front of them, blowing up the dust on the ground. Emo Qingwu's red clothes were as red as blood in the dust. Her smile also seemed to become ethereal. This time, she didn't avoid his eyes and said softly, "It's that dream." Chu Yang suddenly felt as if his head was covered with ice and snow. His whole body quivered and he muttered, "Reached the end?" Emo Qingwu nodded affirmatively. "Yes." Chu Yang smiled and said, "That's just a dream." Emo Qingwu frowned slightly and said with some confusion between her brows, "But I feel that it's real." Chu Yang took in this trace of confusion and relaxed immediately. He said in a low voice, "But it's not real after all." The strong horse galloped. Emo Qingwu turned around on the horse and looked at him fixedly. Her red clothes fluttered and covered her head. Her beautiful hair rushed towards Chu Yang's face. Her eyes were deep and tender. She murmured softly, "Chu Yang? Chu Yang?" Unexpectedly, it was a tone that was filled with 1,000 twists and turns, a tone that was so tender that it seemed like it was about to break. Chu Yang held her in his arms and let her feel the warmth of his body. He rested his chin on Emo Qingwu's head and said in a soft, resolute, heavy, and heartbroken voice, "That was a dream." "That's a dream." Emo Qingwu's eyes dimmed. Then she buried her face in Chu Yang's arms and felt that familiar smell. She nodded gently and said softly, "Yes, that's a dream." Then she didn't move anymore. She snuggled in Chu Yang's arms. Her breathing was heavy and she actually fell asleep. Chu Yang's face was like water. His eyes looked straight ahead. He looked at the scenery on both sides flying backward. His eyes were malicious, like an injured beast. At this moment, no one dared to come near him. He didn't even know what he was thinking in his heart. But his whole body was filled with mania. But it made all his brothers believe one thing. If there was an enemy in front of him at this moment, even if it was a 1,000,000-strong army, if he didn't kill them all, he wouldn't stop. Emo Tianji rode a white horse and followed beside him. Seeing Emo Qingwu snuggling in Chu Yang's arms, he was a little dissatisfied and jealous at first. But gradually he realized that Emo Qingwu and Chu Yang's expressions were a little abnormal. He couldn't help but ponder. Could it be that something happened? 11 people and 10 horses. They galloped towards the center of the continent. Another 3 days later, they reached the Black Blood Forest. It took them 5 days to pass through the Black Blood Forest. It was that familiar scenery again. 2 years of round trips. Chu Yang sighed in his heart. Looking at the ink-black Black Blood Forest behind him, he suddenly thought of a poem and an aloof woman in a fluttering white dress. Noble and elegant, as cold as the moon, an unattainable woman. If we meet again in the clouds, please sweep away the fallen flowers in Jiangnan. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and urged the horse forward. Up ahead, they reached the Yi clan's territory. From here, they would go all the way to the northwest. There, they still had an extremely important battle to catch up with. Diwu Qingru needed that battle, and so did Emo Tianji. As if he could tell what Chu Yang was thinking, Emo Tianji urged the horse closer to him. "Don't be anxious. We have to go there slowly." Chu Yang frowned slightly. "Go there slowly?" Emo Tianji smiled. "Firstly, our strength has just taken a big step forward. This kind of sudden increase in strength needs to be honed before it can be integrated with our own battle techniques, as well as the tacit understanding between brothers. We need time. Otherwise, if we go there rashly and meet with any accidents, there will be unnecessary injuries. We are anxious about the current situation, but you have to believe that Diwu Qingru is even more anxious than us." Emo Tianji revealed an inexplicable smile. "We are anxious, but we can totally hold it in. But Diwu Qingru is now like an ant being roasted on fire. He is so anxious that he is close to breaking down. So, there's no harm in letting him bear it a little longer." Emo Tianji smiled. Chu Yang suddenly felt a little happy. He scolded with a smile, "Tianji, I just realized that you are much more sinister than Diwu Qingru. Emotianji smiled. Also, no matter how anxious he is, Diwu Qingru will do his best to maintain it. Moreover, he will use a method that will continuously increase his prestige to maintain this situation. I absolutely believe in this. If he can't do it, then he doesn't deserve to be our opponent. Chu Yang nodded. He also firmly believed in this point. Let's go. Now that everyone has crossed the boundary between immortals and mortals, let us start from the northwest and stir up the world. Mo Tianji raised his eyebrows and looked at the northwest. He said lightly, "It's also time to let Diwu Qingru know about me." Chapter 1424. These words made Yi Xiaoyao and the rest lower their heads in shame. Smart kids remember network super fast hands. Lan Mofeng lowered his head, only feeling a burning sensation in his heart. He held back the tears that hadn't really flowed out of his eyes for thousands of years. Only he knew. What Diwu Qingru said, the reason for him to stay here was to consider the big picture, to fight a common enemy, to be friends for thousands of years, and so on. It was complete nonsense. Because the current Lan Mofeng didn't think of the plan to live in seclusion in the mountains at all. He didn't know where he was going to go in the future at all. After the clan was wiped out, Lan Mofeng had been at a loss. His heart was muddled, like a walking corpse. He didn't even have the strength to think about the future. He could only stay here and risk his life in confusion and resentment. As for the friendship of the big clans, Lan Mofeng cursed in his heart. Friendship my ass. What kind of friendship do you have with them? As for now, Diwu Qingru had proposed a solution: live in seclusion in the mountains and wait for the right time. But not only Lan Mofeng, but the others also knew. How could it be so easy to live in seclusion in the mountains? Once the war started and the wind and clouds gathered, no matter where you were, it would be easy to find you. What's more, where would the resources, food, drinks, and other things for cultivation come from after living in seclusion? The few people left in the Lan clan could be said to be poor at this moment. Were the descendants of the big clans going to be reduced to robbing people? So this plan obviously wasn't feasible. But Diwu Qingru's words had an effect after all. Diwu Qingru didn't go overboard. Then he said, "Our opponent is the Tribulation Sword Master. For thousands of years, once the Tribulation Sword Master appeared, he would sweep the world. If we don't unite at this time, we can only wait to repeat the fate of our seniors and be swept away again. So, everyone..." He stopped speaking earnestly. Only then did everyone start to really discuss. Under Diwu Qingru's guidance, they finally got on the right track step by step. First, they sent 2 experts to infiltrate and find out the truth. Then they would make plans. At the same time, they would ask for help from the clan. As for the 2 people sent out, firstly, they had to be smart. Secondly, he had to be meticulous. Thirdly, his cultivation had to be high. Fourthly, his speed had to be fast. Fifthly, when facing a lower Jizuan, he had to have a certain degree of confidence in escaping. Therefore, after a long discussion, the candidates were finally decided: Xiao Jingyan and Shi Qishu. The 2 of them immediately set off, disappearing into the heavy night fog. Diwu Qingru returned to his tent and took out a book. Then he leaned against the cushion and started to read. His posture seemed very leisurely. However, only those who were familiar with him could tell that he was actually waiting for something. After a long time, a voice came from outside the tent. "May I ask if Commander-in-Chief Diwu is here?" A low voice sounded. Immediately after, someone reported, "Commander-in-Chief, Senior Lan requests an audience." Diwu Qingru sounded very surprised. "Ah? Please come in." The door curtain was lifted, and a gust of chilly air gushed in. Lan Mofeng walked in and bowed very respectfully toward Diwu Qingru. "Commander-in-Chief Diwu." "You're too polite." Diwu Qingru stood up. Putting down the book in his hands, he enthusiastically offered his seat to Zhang Xian. "Elder, please take a seat. Servants, serve tea." The aroma of tea filled the air. Lan Mofeng didn't speak for a long time. Diwu Qingru was naturally even more patient. He just smiled and drank tea with him, similarly not saying a word. Commander-in-Chief. Although Commander-in-Chief has explained everything to me today, I can feel that the Yi and Shao clan will never let anyone or anything go wrong. The Yi clan, Shao clan and the rest definitely won't let our Lan clan off just because of this. After a long while, Lan Mofeng finally spoke. The moment he spoke, he went straight to the point. Diwu Qingro frowned and said, I can guess that too. My reason is a little far-fetched after all. However, they won't be so stupid as to destroy their own Great Wall at this time, right? This is a critical moment. Lan Mofeng smiled bitterly. We are actually the same kind of people. To us, there's actually nothing to be concerned about at critical moments. We're all people who have gone through life and death in the martial world. We should strike when it's time. This is a principle. The Lan clan has finally declined. In their eyes, our little bit of power is already irrelevant to the big picture. Besides, after 10,000 years, they're actually not very afraid of the Tribulation Swordmaster anymore. 10,000 years of supremacy has cultivated confidence and arrogance that's hard to get rid of. Lan Mofeng smiled sadly. For example, Commander-in-Chief Diwu, to be honest, although the Lan clan has already been destroyed by the Tribulation Swordmaster and we're the only ones left, it's enough to show how terrifying the Tribulation Swordmaster is, right? Diwu Qingro nodded. That's right. The Tribulation Swordmaster and his tribulation are very scary. Lan Mofeng laughed as if he was about to cry. But even now, in the eyes of the Lan clan, these stray dogs, the Tribulation Swordmaster is still not that scary and can still be destroyed with a flip of the hand. This mentality even includes myself. Do you understand what I'm saying? Diwu Qingro sighed deeply, his expression heavy. It may sound ridiculous, but I really do understand. Lan Mofeng smiled sadly. He did understand. After 10,000 years of supremacy, 10,000 years of being high and mighty, this kind of arrogance and confidence had already seeped into his bones and couldn't be changed easily. Unless he encountered it personally and saw it with his own eyes, he might change a little. But before he experienced it personally, there was no way he could change. A fatal arrogance. This was just like how we usually refuse to admit defeat. Although we knew that someone was many times stronger than us and still lost to someone, in our hearts, we still felt that that someone was just SOSO. Diwu Qingro looked up and sighed. I finally understand why the big clans of the past failed. It's because of this mentality. He couldn't help but sigh. There were many ways to guard against the Tribulation Swordmaster. There were also many ways to kill the Tribulation Swordmaster. Even after the Tribulation Swordmaster had grown up, there were still many ways to eliminate him. It wasn't impossible. But all the big clans in the past 10,000 years had failed. To the Tribulation Swordmaster who had just started to grow up, their strength was billions of times stronger. To the Tribulation Swordmaster who had grown up, it was already billions of times stronger. Even to the Tribulation Swordmaster who was at his peak, the power of the big clans could still be dozens or even hundreds of times stronger. But they still lost. Diwu Qingro had even thought of the stupidest way before. Every 100 years or 50 years in the upper three heavens? Just go once for 3 days. Kill all the young experts who had risen to fame in one fell swoop. They would rather kill billions of people than let go of a suspicious person. If this went on, the Tribulation Swordmaster wouldn't even have a chance to grow up. Even if the Tribulation Swordmaster could grow up, then could the Tribulations too? As long as the Tribulation Swordmaster couldn't gather all the tribulations, what was there to fear? For some reason, no one had ever implemented this method. No one had even done the stupidest way. Not to mention the other methods, it's not a bad thing to have confidence and pride. Lan Mofeng said bitterly, but to big clans like us, it's a fatal oversight. If it weren't for the great change in the clan, I wouldn't have thought of it either. But even though I've thought of it now, I still can't change my mentality. Diwu Qingro let out a long sigh. So big clans are destined not to be united. Lan Mofeng smiled bitterly. Diwu Qingro lowered his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. So, It won't be long before the Yi and Shao clans deal with us. And when that time comes, it will also make things difficult for you, the commander-in-chief. Di Wuqing tapped the table lightly with his fingers. Yes, I've also thought of this. At present, I'm looking for a way to resolve this crisis. Lan Mofeng fell silent again. After a long while, he suddenly raised his head. Commander-in-Chief Diwu, your Diwu clan is only a vassal of the Zhuge clan. For someone as talented as you, it's really too much of a pity and too much of a grievance. Di Wuqing smiled bitterly. There's nothing we can do even if it's grievance, Lan Mofeng asked cautiously. Commander-in-Chief, what plans does the Diwu clan have in the future? Di Wuqing was silent for a moment. Finally, he said dispassionately, the birth of the tribulations is a tribulation for your big clans, but also an opportunity for you. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity for the Diwu clan. It's not necessarily impossible for us to rise. Di Wuqing's voice was very heavy. Heroes emerge in troubled times. He spoke very frankly and clearly, not hiding his ambition at all. He knew that what Lan Mofeng needed now was his own ambition. If he had no ambition, then Lan Mofeng would turn around and leave. He wouldn't even say anything more to him. Lan Mofeng stared at him for a long while before he said, Commander-in-Chief, thank you for your honesty. Now, I have a suggestion. Di Wuqing said gently, please speak. We can work together. Lan Mofeng took a deep breath. Commander-in-Chief is someone who can achieve great things, so I'll take a gamble. From today onwards, I'll hand over the fate of the Lan clan to you, Commander-in-Chief. We'll create great things together. One day, Commander-in-Chief achieves meteoric success. I only ask that you give the Lan clan a place to establish its foundation so that my descendants can reproduce and live on. That will be enough. Di Wuqing fell silent. After a long while, he sighed softly. I hope that I can strengthen the Diwu clan, and I also hope that I can bring glory to both our clans at the same time. Lan Mofeng stood up, his eyes shining with excitement. Thank you. Thank you. Upon hearing this form of address, Di Wuqing's eyes shone brightly. He smiled gently and said, Rest assured, Senior Lan. As long as I, Di Wuqing am around, the Lan clan will not be wiped out. Lan Mofeng had thought it through very clearly before he came here. All kinds of ostracization and scheming previously, and the situation of being at the end of the road made him know that only by joining Di Wuqing now would he have a chance of survival. Otherwise, when the Yi clan and the Shao clan really made their move, then even Di Wuqing would have no choice but to go with the flow. As he watched Lan Mofeng walk out, Di Wuqing slowly sat down and put his face in the shadow of the light. Chu Yang, the pressure you put on the big clans will make me successful. Di Wuqing said quietly in his heart, before you arrived, I've already done it. I'll gain even more. Third update, I beg for monthly votes, I beg for recommendation votes. GRQ. Chapter 1425. There was no smugness on Di Wuqing's face. Instead, there was some heaviness. Smart kids remember network's super fast hands. My current strength is still a far cry from Chu Yang's brother Tribulation. With his hands behind his back, Di Wuqing paced slowly in the tent, thinking to himself, I still need to continue exerting pressure. Although Lan Mofeng is on my side for the time being, he was forced by the situation after all. Strictly speaking, it's not my own strength. It's just that it may be easy to divide and intimidate the remaining people, but it's almost impossible to subdue them. Di Wuqing pondered and paced. There was a burst of mist in the air. A black shadow suddenly appeared in the tent and stood quietly behind Di Wuqing. Di Wuqing's expression didn't change, as if he didn't notice. He was still pacing, but he asked softly, May I ask why you helped me? His tone seemed to have long noticed the arrival of the black shadow. It was very normal and calm. And he went straight to the point. There was absolutely no nonsense like, you're here? A strange light flashed in the black shadow's eyes. He said solemnly, you can detect my arrival? Di Wuqing didn't speak. He just shook his head lightly. Just from this sentence, he deduced that this person's IQ wasn't very high. Because what he should be asking the most was, how did you detect my arrival? And not, you can detect my arrival? One was a simple question, and the other was a question with a purpose. The two sentences sounded similar, but in fact, they were very different. The air has changed, Diwu Qingru said lightly. You're still hiding your strength, right? The man in black said lightly, with your age and experience, you can't reach such a high cultivation level. It's impossible to reach such a high level of cultivation. How did you do it? Diwu Qingru shook his head. May I ask who asked you to help me? With these two sentences, Diwu Qingru knew that this man in black wasn't the leader. If the leader had such IQ, then Diwu Qingru would rather give up the vested interests than cooperate with him. A wolf-like enemy was easy to deal with, but a pig-like ally was really deadly. A few days ago, when the man in black came to Diwu Qingru and proposed the assassination plan, Diwu Qingru was already puzzled. Today, the assassination plan had already worked. He finally asked the question in his heart. There's always a reason for helping you. The black-robed man said dispassionately, it's just a mere Lan Mafeng and the remaining forces of the Lan clan. I'm still too weak. Diwu Qingru nodded. Someone wanted me to ask you, who are you waiting for? The black-clothed man asked. Diwu Qingru indifferently said, since this person asked you to ask me who I am waiting for, then he already knows who I am waiting for. The man in black had the urge to scratch his head, but he held himself back. He asked the most important question, do you know their identity? Diwu Qingru sneered, if I had known, would I have done this? The black-clothed man couldn't help but nod. Yes, if he really knew their identities, then the world would have long been at peace. We are doing this for your Diwu family. You don't have to be wary of us. The man in black followed his instructions and said this sentence. Diwu Qingru insipidly said, I have never doubted my allies. As long as he's not too mysterious. The black-clothed man was silent. There was a kind of anger brewing within him. But in the end he didn't flare up. Tomorrow, we'll stop the two from the Shao and Shi families. I'm here to inform you. Diwu Qingru nodded and said without any surprise, don't kill them. Of course. The black-robed man laughed mischievously. Then, he turned around and disappeared without a trace. Diwu Qingru's posture didn't change. He stood quietly. After a long time. Only then did he shake his head. There were countless questions in his mind, but he didn't say any of them out loud. But he only maintained an attitude of distrust at the very least. Because the other party was too mysterious. For people like Diwu Qingru, mystery meant danger. Diwu Qingru would never tell his plans to people he didn't know the details of. Don't be wary of you? How could that be possible? Who is the mastermind? What does he have to do with the Diwu family? Or is he using me? Why is he using me? If he's not using me, why is he helping me so much? What do I have to be used for? Could it be the law enforcement officers? Could it be the Li family? Or the people on Chu Yang's side are pretending to be mysterious? On the surface, this matter seems to benefit my Diwu family, but in the end, who will be the real beneficiary? Even if the Diwu family benefits, will there be any serious consequences? These were all questions for Diwu Qingru, but now he only buried them in his heart and didn't even mutter to himself. I'd rather be a free man with no power than a puppet with great power. Diwu Qingru's eyes sharpened. No matter who you are, no matter what your purpose is, I will find out sooner or later. You want to keep me, Diwu Qingru, in the dark? Who in this world can do that? Darkness. A man in a black robe stood at the top of the mountain, looking at the thousands of miles of snow and ice in front of him, motionless. The sound of clothes fluttering in the wind was heard. A black shadow came like lightning. How is it? The man in the black robe asked. He's very cautious. And very careful. But a little too careful, the man in black said respectfully. If he wasn't careful, the Diwu family would have been finished long ago. The man in the black robe frowned and sighed. After listening to the man in black recount the process of this trip, he said lightly, since he knows what to do, then cooperate with his plan. although it was a little rushed, but we can't wait any longer. Yes. Even if he has some reservations, it's because we are too mysterious. You don't have to worry about this. Yes. I'll sit at the place we agreed on earlier and watch the overall situation. If there's nothing important, don't look for me, the man in the black robe said with his hands behind his back. When I'm not here, you just have to listen to Diwu Qingrou's command. The man in the black robe said, seeing him is like seeing me. Seeing him is like seeing me. This sentence was a little heavy. The man in black certainly knew what kind of monstrous power the man in front of him had. When he heard this sentence, he almost couldn't believe his own ears. The man in black sweated all over and bowed to the ground. I'll follow your orders. The man in the black robe smiled sinisterly and floated up, disappearing into the night fog. The man in black slowly stood up, intuitively confused. He muttered to himself, "What's going on? What's so earth-shattering about this Diwu family? How is he worthy of the master's favor? Why can't I see it? Could it be he and the master have something?" Before he finished speaking, there was a whooshing sound from afar. He had already suffered a heavy slap on his face. A voice came directly into his ears from afar, extremely cold and harsh. "You're courting death." The man in black sweated profusely and fell to his knees. He kowtowed repeatedly. After a cold snort, the man in black spat out a mouthful of blood as if his chest had been hit by a hammer. He fell to the ground, exhausted. But he was finally relieved. If there's one more time, self-destruct. Following this harsh reprimand, there were no other sounds in the world. The man in black kowtowed to the ground. He almost fainted. Self-destruct. If there was one more time, it would actually end up with his body and soul destroyed? In another place in this world. The mountains still stood tall, the snow still covered thousands of miles, and the land was still covered in snow. But how is it? Wu Jueqing, dressed in black, stood with his hands behind his back, looking at his disciple dotingly. Wu Jueqing was extremely satisfied with this disciple of his. Her progress in cultivation and comprehension were really unparalleled in the world, especially in the cultivation of poison techniques. Her progress was even more rapid. Coupled with the help of those heaven-defying resources left behind by Chu Yang, she was already on the verge of breaking through to supreme martial artist in a short period of time. The fog around Chu Lu slowly retracted back into her petite body. After a moment of silence, she said, "Teacher, this poison technique of our sect, if it's not caused by secret poison techniques and techniques, our heavenly poison divine technique is more like an orthodox technique. When I cultivate it, I feel like I'm just and honorable." There was a smile in Wu Jueqing's eyes. Oh! Confusion appeared on Chu Lu's tender face. Poison techniques, in the eyes of others, aren't elegant. Rather, they have a sinister feel to them. However, I can't quite understand why they're being used in such an open and above-board manner. Wu Jueqing chuckled. "Girl, it's normal for you to have such thoughts. This world has always been taught this way, it's understandable. However, to the true heavenly Tao of martial arts, this saying is wrong." Chu Lu asked, "Wrong? There's no good or evil in martial arts, there's good or evil in people." Wu Jueqing said dispassionately, "You must remember this. If there's anything you don't understand, if I'm not around in the future, just ask your big brother. Your big brother has an exceptionally deep understanding of this saying." Chu Lu's face lit up. As long as someone praised Chu Yang, Chu Lu would be happy. Of course, this saying is also relative. Wu Jueqing said, "I heard that the techniques of some alien races are very different from ours. Their techniques are different from ours. However, I've never seen them before. If you see them in the future, just kill them without mercy." Wu Jueqing looked into the void and said solemnly, "Let me ask you, why do you cultivate martial arts?" Chu Lu replied without hesitation, "This, I've heard big brothers say before that cultivating martial arts and becoming strong is to protect. To protect the people and things one cares about. To protect one's bottom line. To protect one's own responsibility." "Hypocrite. Wu Jueqing pursed his lips and said mercilessly, "Your big brother really disgusts me." Chu Er pouted at once. "Teacher, your words are really unpleasant to hear. You have to apologize to me." Wu Jueqing said straightforwardly, "I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing." Wu Jueqing's apology was very well practiced. It came out of his mouth instantly and flowed smoothly. Other than the lack of sincerity, there was really nothing wrong with it. One could guess that this wasn't the first time the poison doctor had apologized to his disciple like this along the way. RQ. Chapter 1426. Chu snorted, fuming and not saying anything. "Smart kids remember network super fast hands," Wu Jueqing said. "Actually, the real purpose of becoming stronger in martial arts is to kill people. Whether it's to protect, to plunder, or to achieve longevity. But there's a prerequisite. No matter what you do, you have to kill people. If you don't kill people, you will be killed. You say that you protect. Then, when someone wants to harm the thing you want to protect, or the person you want to protect, will you kill this person? If you don't kill him, he will come again next time. He may even destroy everything you protect. So you have to kill him. If someone obstructs you from achieving longevity, will you kill him? If you want to plunder someone else's things, will they give it to you obediently just because you say so? Therefore, killing people is the most important thing in martial arts practice. Practicing sabers, swords, and fists is all to kill people. And the reason we use poison is also to kill people." Wu Jueqing said, "Why can they do it openly but we can't? We who use poison should be even more righteous than those who practice sabers, swords, fists and kicks. More open and above board. Because, compared to us, they are the ones who only want to kill people. But if we use poison well, not only can we kill people, we can also save people. But can they use swords and sabers to save people?" Wu Jueqing said, "That's why we are the good guys. You have to remember this." Chu Le said indignantly, "They use sabers, swords, fists, and feet to uphold justice. Of course they can save people." "What is upholding justice?" Wu Jueqing pursed his lips. "If they want to save a person who is surrounded, then. If they don't kill the people who are attacking this person, can they save them? Can they uphold justice? Upholding justice also requires killing people." Chu was a little confused at once. She felt that what her teacher said was all fallacious logic, but to refute it completely, she couldn't do it at all. If we use the same poison, someone will die. If we use the same poison, they will die. But some people will come back to life. Have you seen anyone who uses a saber to bring a dead person back to life? Wu Jueqing said mockingly. Chu Le was stunned. This sentence was even more irrefutable. "That's why we are the true righteous rulers." Wu Jueqing lectured him righteously. "That's why our sky poison sect's mental cultivation technique is so profound. That's why he's so open and above board." Chu Le said doubtfully, "I see." Wu Jueqing was greatly comforted. This northwest region is now the most dangerous place in the pugilistic world. Then you can go out and practice. Wu Jueqing said, "There are as many experts as there are clouds in the sky. You can totally let loose and train as much as you want." "All right." Chu Le was eager to try, her eyes shining. "Stay here for the next 2 days and don't move. Try your best to break through. I'm going out for a while." Wu Jueqing said, "With one Renjie and the other 2 guarding you, there shouldn't be any problems." "Master, where are you going?" Chu Le tilted her head and asked. A hint of a cold smile appeared on Wu Jueqing's thin face. "I can sense that an old friend seems to have come here as well. And he's even stirring up a storm here. No matter what, I need to go over and say hello." Chu Le nodded as if she understood. "Master, come back earlier then." Wu Jueqing nodded slowly. "Of course." On the other side, one Renjie and the other 2 were also practicing day and night. Ever since Wei Wuyan's death, the 3 of them seemed to have suddenly become silent. Practicing. It became the most important thing in their lives. If their cultivation wasn't high, how could they destroy the Chun clan and avenge Wei Wuyan? This was the consensus of the 3 of them. And this time, they followed the poison doctor Wu Jueqing. Whether it was the art of poison or martial arts, this person was almost any in the world. He could be called a great grandmaster. With such a heaven-sent opportunity, wouldn't it be a waste if they didn't improve themselves properly? And Wu Jueqing didn't hide anything either. Although he was a little impatient with the three of them asking for advice, he still told them everything he knew. During this period of time, the three of them benefited a lot. The realm that they had just broken through was actually showing signs of breaking through again. Although it was because of the resources that Chu Yang left behind, this was after all the first time in their lives that the three of them cultivated at such a fast speed. So the three of them were pleasantly surprised. They cultivated even more diligently, wishing that they could use all their time to cultivate without eating, drinking, or sleeping. They were afraid that they would return to their original state after this period of time. Wu Jueqing instructed. Then, his black robe fluttered and he disappeared in a flash. No one knew where he went. Chu Yang and the others galloped on their horses and actually encountered very few obstacles. Only 30 to 40 people recognized that this person was the legendary extraterrestrial demon Chu Yang and wanted to do something. However, under the charge of a mid-grade supreme being, none of the waves could stop them for even a moment. Just like that, they smoothly crossed the Yi clan's territory. What worried Chu Yang was that Jianghu suddenly became very sleepy after breaking through to the supreme martial artist level. She often nestled in Chu Yang's arms and slept for a day and a night. This made Chu Yang a little uneasy. Tianji was even more anxious, as if his heart was on fire. Not to mention a supreme martial artist, even a king level wouldn't be so sleepy. Both of them were apprehensive. They didn't know how many times they took Jianghu's pulse, checked on her, and asked her questions. Tianji even specially divined the heavenly secrets for his sister's sleep, but of course, they didn't get anything. The only thing that reassured them was that once Jianghu woke up, she would immediately return to normal. Her sleep had no effect on her mind and cultivation. Until now, Jianghu had already been half asleep for 7 or 8 days. Tianji was so anxious that blisters formed on his mouth. He even had some doubts. Damn it, is it because of Chu Yang's embrace? Does this guy have a sleepy body that my sister can't help but want to sleep every time she's in his arms? Chu Yang was furious about this for a long time. Tianji once wanted to carry his sister on his way, but was sternly rejected by Chu Yang. His words made Tianji unable to breathe for 3 days. Get lost. You scoundrel. Only the heavens knew how Tianji felt when he heard this. But from the way he was gnashing his teeth, it was to the point where he couldn't wait to chop Chu Yang into meat dumplings. This day. Early morning. As the weather got colder and colder as they went north, Chu Yang had already wrapped Jianghu in a thick mink coat. She was completely wrapped up. As the white snow drifted down, Chu Yang suddenly felt movement in his arms. The little girl was wriggling in his arms. She seemed to have woken up. He hurriedly lifted her up to take a look. The little girl's starry eyes were intoxicated, her cheeks were flushed, and her eyes were watery. It was the charming appearance of a sleepy begonia. Minister Chu instantly stared at her with lustful eyes. Chu Yang, it's very strange. Jianghu blinked and rubbed her eyes. It's really strange. What's wrong? Minister Chu was a little scared when he asked this question. Could it be that she had that damn dream several times again? Oh my God, it's tormented me so many times that I'm about to break down. I was unconscious for a few days, and I suddenly felt that I had comprehended something. Jianghu wrinkled her beautiful eyebrows and said, a complete cultivation technique automatically appeared in my mind. Moreover, once this cultivation technique appeared, it automatically replaced my original cultivation path. That's why I was unconscious for a few days, huh? Chu Yang was stunned. There's such a thing in the world? It's absolutely true. Jianghu was also a little surprised. Chu Yang, could it be that I also have some kind of strange bloodline? The bloodline has its own inheritance? Nonsense. Tianji, who was at the side, was furious. Little girl, if you spout any more nonsense, I'll spank your butt until it becomes a triangular 8-petal. Tianji couldn't help but be angry. Mo Qingwu had some kind of strange bloodline, then what would his whole family become? Chu Yang was furious. He turned around and shouted, "Why are you so fierce? You weren't so fierce when Qingwu was bullied. Now you're bullying your own sister. Shut up. Other than exposing the truth, you don't have any other skills." Mo Tianji muttered in dissatisfaction, but he shut his mouth obediently. His face was full of black lines. Chu Yang had pointed out Mo Tianji's weakness. It was as if someone had caught Mo Tianji's pigtail. Even if Mo Tianji had heaven-defying wisdom, he had no choice but to withdraw from the fight when Chu Yang had said these words. This was the ultimate weapon to deal with Mo Tianji. Of course, Chu Yang wouldn't forget that whenever Mo Tianji made Chu Yang unhappy, he would say this sentence with great familiarity. Every time this happened, Mo Tianji's unchanging pretentious face would have an expression as if he had eaten feces. If Chu Yang saw this kind of expression, it would be the greatest pleasure in the world. Even the greatest depression would be blown away with the wind. Minister Chu's mentality of building his own happiness on Mo Tianji's pain was really indescribable. Mo Qingwu shrank her neck. Brother Chu Yang is still the best. Second brother is so annoying every day. Yes, he's too annoying. Let's ignore him. Chu Yang hurriedly seized the opportunity to add insult to injury. Mo Qingwu giggled. Qingwu, compared to your original cultivation technique, which one is stronger? Chu Yang asked with concern. On the side, Mo Tianji stretched his ears with a black face. The current cultivation technique is very powerful, and much more powerful than the cultivation technique that my original master, Ning Tianya, taught me. Mo Qingwu said strangely, but where did this come from? On the side, Mo Tianji heaved a long sigh of relief and said, there are no disadvantages, right? For example, are there any serious consequences after practicing it? Second brother, you're really overthinking. Mo Qingwu said angrily, how can such a magical cultivation technique have such disadvantages? Mo Tianji smiled with relief. It's just my personality. I'm just casually asking. It's good that there's nothing wrong. Chu Yang also frowned and said, what's the name of this cultivation technique? Heavenly Dance. Mo Qingwu said, the introduction of this cultivation technique says that once you master it, you can move the heavens with a single dance. Heavenly Dance? Move the heavens with a single dance? Chu Yang's body shook. Thank you for your monthly votes. I will continue to write the third update. GRQ. Chapter 1427. Upon hearing this, Chu Yang inexplicably thought of a poem. The smart child remembers the web, super fast hands type the new web. Light as a dream, the sea of blood and the mountain of bones dance enchantingly. 1,000 miles away with a sword, the Lord asks no questions. Life and death follow to the heavens. Wasn't the artistic conception of this poem equivalent to a dance that shook the heavens? Could it be, Mo Qingwu slowly recited, Heavenly Dance, Dance of the Heavens. The first dance is a dance of the heavens and the earth. The second dance is the darkness of the heavens and the earth. The third dance is the coldness of the moon. The fourth dance moves the power of the universe. The fifth dance changes the vicissitudes of life in an instant. The dance moves the heavens. Heavenly Dance, a dance moves the heavens. Impressive. Chu Yang pondered. According to what Mo Qingwu said, the cultivation of this heavenly dance was an impressive martial art. But where did it come from? Anyway, it couldn't be some bloodline power. Since it existed, it must have a history. Wait. Chu Yang suddenly remembered something. That was when he, Mo Qingwu, and Zi Sheqing were in Tianji City. When Zi Sheqing met Mo Qingwu for the first time, she once said that Mo Qingwu's current cultivation technique was not compatible with her physique. If she went to a higher level plane, it would become a restriction. So, Zi Sheqing once used a great magical power to directly enter Mo Qingwu's consciousness and imparted a set of cultivation techniques to Mo Qingwu. She said that when Mo Qingwu reached the supreme grade, the boundary between immortal and mortal, this set of cultivation techniques would automatically activate. Now, this set of cultivation techniques of Jianghu could really be said to be automatically activated. Could this be the magical set of cultivation techniques that Zi Sheqing imparted to Jianghu? Chu Yang was a little confused. If it was really as this heavenly dance said, it was so magical and powerful. Then, why didn't Zi Sheqing practice it herself? Chu Yang frowned and asked, Jianghu, with your current cultivation, which dance is it in the land of heavenly dance? Jianghu pursed her lips and said, What dance? The first dance, the dance of heaven and earth, I haven't even started yet. My cultivation is not enough. Chu Yang and Tianji were shocked at the same time. The two of them almost fell off the horse. Supreme grade, the peak of the boundary between immortal and mortal and mortal. In this heavenly continent, she could definitely be considered a top expert. With such cultivation she couldn't even, the first dance? Insufficient cultivation? For a moment, the master of calamity sword and the master of calculation and manipulation felt dizzy. What kind of cultivation technique was this to have such terrifying power? But I can feel that this set of martial arts technique is very, very powerful. Jianghu was very proud. She raised her small head and said, Chu Yang was even more puzzled. From many aspects, this was the technique that Zi Sheqing had given to Jianghu. And Zi Sheqing's own cultivation technique was not as powerful as this set of cultivation technique. What was going on? However, what he did not know was that this heavenly dance technique was extremely powerful, and it was something that Zi Sheqing had obtained by chance. And this technique had a strict condition, and that was that the cultivator had to be below the dividing soul tier in order to be able to cultivate it. Once one had reached the stage where they could divide their soul, cultivating this set of martial arts had become a fatal matter. The moment he moved, he would enter qi deviation. In the language of the Chongtian continent, the divided soul stage was the supreme grade soul stage. Below the dividing soul tier was the paragon tier. And once this boundary was reached, this set of martial arts technique would automatically activate. When Zi Sheqing obtained this set of martial arts technique, she had already far surpassed the so-called dividing soul tier. Although she knew that this set of martial arts technique was suitable for women to cultivate, and it could be said to be the best technique in the world for female cultivators, it was useless for her. Once she saw that Jianghu's physique was so heaven-defying, Zi Sheqing was instantly delighted and gave it to her without hesitation. Jianghu suddenly broke through to the supreme grade, and this set of martial arts technique immediately activated in her body. This was also the reason why Jianghu had been in a coma these few days. Jianghu had felt that something was wrong when she had set out. She didn't know what was wrong, but she still chose to rely on the embrace of the person she could rely on the most to seek shelter. Therefore, she had resolutely decided to ride with Chu Yang on the same horse. And she indeed slept in Chu Yang's arms for 8 days. She completed this earth-shattering transformation for her. These things, whether it was the current Chu Yang or Jianghu, both of them did not know. But what was worth mentioning was that Jianghu, from today onwards, really had the biggest asset to accompany Chu Yang in life and death. Light like floating in a dream, enchanting dancing in a sea of blood and mountains of bones. Don't ask a lord who wields a sword for 1,000 miles, following to the heavens in life and death. She would definitely dance in a sea of blood and mountains of bones, displaying Jianghu's unique, enchanting beauty. She would definitely accompany the person she loved, traveling thousands of miles with her sword, in life and death, in heaven and on earth, in heaven and on earth. Chu Yang felt relieved and reminded her, Jianghu, do you still remember the gift that Sister Zi Sheqing gave you? That is a set of martial arts technique. Jianghu suddenly remembered, and her eyes lit up. I remember now, this is a gift from Sister Zi. At that time, Sister Zi also said that when I reached the supreme grade, this set of martial arts technique would automatically activate. Her eyes were full of gratitude and longing. Sister Zi is really a good person? I really did not expect it to be such a powerful martial arts technique. At that time, I only felt her finger touching my forehead, and I felt as if there was something extra in my brain. So, Then, full of longing, she said, I really don't know where Sister Z is now, and if she is doing well. If I can see her, I will definitely give her a kiss. Chu Yang laughed, and his eyes flashed with an inexplicable light. He said, we will find her one day. Jianghu, you have to cultivate well, and not let down Sister Z's expectations and efforts. Yes, I like this set of martial arts technique very much. Especially the name Tianwu. Mo Jianghu said, Mother said that a daughter will never dance for Mo Jianghu, but I am only willing to dance for you. Chu Yang's blood rushed to his head, and he forcibly suppressed it. He said, I also like to watch you dance. Mo Jianghu pondered for a while, and nodded hesitantly. She said softly, Chu Yang actually, halfway through her sentence, she suddenly hesitated. Chu Yang was a little puzzled. He asked, what's wrong? Mo Jianghu took a breath and said, I cultivate mainly to be with you. I don't want to be a burden to you. You want to soar in the sky, and I will accompany you to dance in the heavens. If you choose to live in seclusion and become an ordinary person now, I would also rather disperse my cultivation. I will accompany you to tour the forest. Mo Jianghu said seriously. Chu Yang was startled. Beside him, Mo Tianji was also startled. Chu Yang only felt that all the blood in his body was rushing to the top of his head. With a voice that was close to moaning, he murmured, Jianghu, Jianghu, and hugged her tightly in his arms. At this moment, he didn't want to say anything, and he didn't know what to say. But any words would be unnecessary. Mo Jianghu leaned quietly in his arms, feeling his thumping heartbeat. A smile appeared on her face, and she said softly, Chu Yang, Sister Z also likes you very much, right? Chu Yang's body couldn't help but stiffen. Mo Jianghu looked up. You also like Sister Z, right? Chu Yang's eyes showed a perplexed look, but his arms that were hugging Mo Jianghu tightened. Mo Jianghu's eyes showed a hint of a smile, and then she buried her little head in Chu Yang's arms again. The horse galloped, and the cold wind was like a knife. Chu Yang's hair flew messily and danced in the air. His brows were tightly knitted, as if he was thinking about something important. Mo Jianghu waited quietly. Chu Yang thought for a long time. Finally, he said bitterly, Jianghu, there are some things that you have the most right to know. But I haven't told you all this time. Now is not the right time. When I'm free, I'll tell you in detail. Mo Jianghu blinked and thought for a long time before she said, Okay, I'll wait for Big Brother Chu Yang to give me an explanation. Explanation? Chu Yang's heart twitched again. Mo Jianghu sat in front of him, watching the road ahead quickly disappear behind them. Her beautiful hair kept fluttering on Chu Yang's face. It was soft, as if there were wisps of tenderness. Again and again, it wrapped Chu Yang within it. In 3 months I'll be 15. Mo Jianghu thought of something, and her little face suddenly blushed like rosy clouds. Her voice also became much softer. 15. Chu Yang coughed twice. What's wrong with being 15? Mo Jianghu twisted her body in dissatisfaction. Chu Yang only felt like a huge loach wrapped in soft silk twisting a few times on his body. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. What a vixen! Although Mo Jianghu was a little shy, her voice became softer and her face redder. I heard second brother say, my neighbor area is only half a year older than me. She's already a month old now. Chu Yang suddenly understood. Could it be that this little girl was thinking of love? He couldn't help but smile strangely. He leaned close to the little girl's almost transparent little ear and whispered, Yes, she's half a year older than you. She's already a month old. She has such strong teeth. Mo Jianghu snorted twice and said softly, Chu Yang, I want. Chu Yang's heart itched unbearably. He said, You want a baby too? Mo Jianghu's face instantly turned red to her neck. Her little hand pinched his waist powerlessly. She panted and said, Bad guy. Big bad guy. Chu Yang laughed loudly. He turned his head and met Mo Tianji's eyes that were like knives looking at him angrily. This look was as if he knew that he had a treasure that was about to be snatched away by others, but he couldn't do anything about it. Chu Yang bared his teeth and shouted, What were you doing when Xiaowu was being bullied? Why are you baring your teeth and glaring at her now? Mo Tianji's face stiffened. He said with inexplicable grief and indignation, I say, big brother, can you not keep mentioning when Xiaowu was being bullied? I'm really speechless, Chu Yang sneered and looked at him complacently. He thought in his heart, if I don't mention this matter to suppress you at all times, who knows how many obstacles you'll set up in the matter between Xiaowu and me. Chapter 1428. Mo Tianji's horse felt the pain and immediately sped up, rushing out like a gust of wind. Mo Tianji, who had always been cautious, actually rushed to the front of the group. This made Gu Duxing and Dong Wuxiang, who had been leading the way, widen their eyes in confusion. Smart kids remember Network's super fast hands, the vanguard had always been the two of us. Why was Mo Tianji joining in the fun today? The two of them had been rushing at the front against the wind and didn't hear what was said behind them. Are you sick? Dong Wuxiang asked in confusion, what's wrong with you today? Get lost. Mo Tianji was full of frustration. With a roar, he passed them and left them in the dust. Dong Wuxiang scratched his head in confusion and asked Gu Duxing, was it Mo Tianji or GMO who passed by just now? He was like a firecracker. Gu Duxing couldn't help but laugh. Slow down. Chu Yang raised his voice and shouted, the snow mountain is up ahead. Don't get caught by the monkeys. Amidst the laughter, they finally reached the snow mountain. A gust of cold wind hit them in the face. Mo Jianghu had obviously never seen such a strange scene. She couldn't help but widen her eyes and take a closer look. She couldn't help but exclaim, how strange. There's actually such a strange scene in this world. The two mountains in front of them were connected. There was only less than 4 to 5 miles of open space between them, forming a canyon. The peak of the mountain in the north was covered in snow, which hadn't melted for many years. One look at it and one would feel cold. Snowflakes were still falling from the sky. On the other hand, the mountain on the other side was a row of late autumn scenery. The trees were yellow. Snow fell from time to time. In the sky, the north was covered with dark clouds and heavy snow, while the south was clear and boundless. With the autumn wind whistling, it was as if an almighty had cut the world in half here with a saber, separating autumn and winter. It should be because of the terrain. Chu Yang pointed at the towering peaks around them and smiled slightly. Mo Jianghu looked around and suddenly realized. I see. As they spoke, Gu Duxing and Dong Wuxiang were already riding side by side, rushing into the narrow path of the snow mountain. To these two, they really weren't worried about any ambush here. One saber and one sword, two supreme martial artists who had surpassed the boundary between immortal and mortal. Even if they were to go up against a high-grade supreme martial artist, they would still be able to put up a fight. Ordinary ambushes were nothing more than food to them. Therefore, these two idiots were just blindly moving forward with their eyes closed. Mo Tianji had already retreated. He arrived at the back of the group and walked side by side with GMO and Luo Kudi. Although Mo Jianghu had recovered, she still didn't come down. She leaned in Chu Yang's arms all the way and was extremely comfortable. When she was tired, she would change her position. When she was sleepy, she would sleep for a while. When she felt like talking, she would talk. When she didn't feel like talking, she would hug Chu Yang and think for a while. To Mo Jianghu, this journey was simply a blissful one. As for Mo Tianji's sighs about girls need to be reserved, and the like, Mo Jianghu simply ignored him. They walked all the way until they reached the mountainside of the snowy mountain. Smoke rose from the chimneys, and a huge sign was erected diagonally on the road, buying horses. Seeing this card, Ao Shiyun, who had always been greedy and stingy, was full of admiration. He clicked his tongue and praised, "You really make me admire you from the bottom of my butt. How astute is your brain? How precise are your calculations? What a sharp eye! How truly talented!" No wonder Ao Shiyun was so emotional. All the way here, it was all wide roads. Only here, it suddenly became steep. Horses couldn't be ridden at all. They could only be disposed of here. And this person had set up such a horse-buying business here. It was practically a huge profit. No matter who it was, even if you were a deity, as long as you rode a horse here, you would have to give it up. And you only needed to pay a very small price to be able to buy a good horse. Moreover, as long as it was a horse that could be ridden all the way here, none of them were ordinary. After this person bought them, he would rush down the mountain and resell them, and he would make a profit of 100 times. This person's business acumen was evident. Yeah. Following a strange cry of surprise, a strange and surprising short and fat man appeared. Chu Yang and the others were stunned when they saw him. This short and fat man definitely lived up to his name. His height was no more than 1.4 meters, but his weight was definitely more than 250 pounds. His 4 limbs were definitely of the same length. His 2 legs were thick and round, and his thighs and calves were as thick as his thighs. It was as if the upper half of a 100-year-old tree had been sawed off, leaving only a short tree stump. His big, square head was firmly pressed against a round, short neck that was even thicker than his head. Below his shoulders, from his shoulders to his lower abdomen, it was definitely a square shape. This person's appearance was extremely unique. It was as if a huge square was propped up on 2 thick and short bars, and a huge ball was placed on top of the huge square. On top of the huge ball, there was another square that was neither big nor small. His 2 eyes were perfectly round like glass balls, and his 2 eyebrows were like 2 shoe brushes, straight and horizontal. His nose was also square, but he had a small, cherry-like mouth that didn't even exist for women. If one were to say that this person was a person, it would be quite a stretch. When Chu Yang and the others saw this, they couldn't help but sigh at the wonders of the Creator. It wasn't strange that the heavens could create handsome men and beautiful women, but to be able to create such a person, it was indeed the work of the gods, and they had put in a lot of effort. Dear guests, you have to go over the snowy mountains. Such a steep mountain path is not easy to walk on. You can't ride a horse. All of you are riding a horse. What a pity. Following a series of smooth pleasantries, the short and fat man rubbed his hands and ran over with a face full of smiles, like a toad sitting on a sleigh. He nodded and bowed. Dear heroes, may I know about these few horses? What plans do you have? Why don't you sell them to me? Not only was this guy's appearance unique, his voice was also extremely unique. It was actually a pure and unpolluted male duck's voice. The moment he opened his mouth, it was as if a weasel had suddenly been thrown into a nest of 1,000 ducks. Furthermore, not only was his voice unique, but his voice was also unique. His speech was even more unique. This series of made people feel even more dizzy. The brothers couldn't help but look up, wanting to see if a flock of old crows had just flown past. Regarding the bargaining, Ao Shiyun was naturally in charge. Duke Xie rolled his electric eyes and walked forward suavely. There's a boss here. Buying horses? Good brain, good brain. The series of us made Chu Yang and the others hold their bellies and laugh. GMO and the others held their bellies and laughed so hard that even tears came out of their eyes. That boss was a catchphrase that he had developed over the years. But Ao Shiyun was deliberately playing a prank. It was just that this prank was really a little too funny. The short and fat man was very well-mannered. He rubbed his hands and laughed. This Duke is really humorous. This is a catchphrase that I've developed over the years. Even though I know that it's a bad habit, I haven't changed it. I've made a fool of myself in front of you heroes. GMO said seriously, it's okay. We won't make a fool of ourselves. Your appearance at most surprised us a little. The short and fat man pouted his cherry lips and actually winked at Jim. You're joking, Duke. There was a thud. GMO was thrown off the horse by this flirtatious look. He trembled all over. Oh my God, you scared me. Mo Qingwu held her belly, laughing so hard that she almost burrowed into Chu Yang's arms. Chu Yang's eyes flashed. He felt that something was wrong. When he saw this short and fat man, he suddenly thought of Tan Tan strangely. Upon closer inspection, this short and fat man's forehead was a little dark red, as if someone had beaten him up. However, if one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to see it at all. But this dark red was enough to hide something, this discovery. It made Chu Yang's heart skip a beat. Could this short and fat man be from the 3 Stars Divine clan? However, to be able to hide his aura so perfectly that no one could see through it, he shouldn't be a simple person, coupled with this comical figure and appearance. Speaking with a comical voice. To outsiders, he looked like a clown who laughed and did everything. However, in Chu Yang's preconceived view, this was a flawless cover. This abnormality was something that even the extremely meticulous Mo Tianji couldn't see through, but Chu Yang could. It was because he was really too familiar with his own junior martial brother, and even saw every bit of Tan Tan's changes before and after. It was only because he remembered it in his heart that he realized this. He still couldn't be sure. Ao Shiyun was speaking over there. What price are you going to pay to buy these few horses of ours? The short and fat man bowed with his hands clasped in front of his chest. His face suddenly turned bitter. Heroes, I'm also forced by life. I need to find a way to survive. Heroes are all rich and overbearing. Why don't you just deal with it for me? As he spoke, he was about to wipe away his tears. Life has been very difficult. Right at this moment, Chu Yang stepped forward and asked, You're buying horses here, but people still beat you up. According to the previous arrangement, Chu Yang wouldn't speak. However, not only did he speak now, he even said something that was strangely off-topic. Ao Shiyun was a little puzzled. I'm supposed to be in charge, why did boss suddenly step forward? However, even though it was strange, he also knew that Chu Yang must have his reasons for suddenly interrupting. Thus, he took a step back and kept silent. The moment Chu Yang opened his mouth, Mo Tianji's ears suddenly perked up. Then he turned around. His gaze seemed warm, but deep in his eyes, there was a glimmer of light. Intentionally or unintentionally, he moved 2 steps and blocked Mo Qingwu's side. The short and fat man was obviously a little puzzled. Why does this hero say that? Chu Yang smiled and raised his hand to point at her. Then who gave you that injury on your forehead? A strange look flashed across the pudgy man's eyes, and he said, So this hero is asking about this. Actually, it's not that. When I sleep at night, I like to sleep on my stomach, and I accidentally got stung by something. Chu Yang smiled faintly. Then what's the matter? Our monthly votes today are the last among the top 8. RQ. Chapter 1429. The short fatty smiled embarrassedly. He opened his cherry mouth and said in a hoarse voice, It's like this. I'm a money grubber. I put the money beside my pillow. I went up when I fell asleep. Chu Yang smiled in his heart. Smart kids remember network's super fast hands. This guy obviously didn't know what he was pressed on when he was talking, but he reacted quickly. His reaction was really fast. He waved his hand and said, As a reward for being pressed on by the money, I don't want a single cent of silver for these 10 horses. They're all yours. As he said that, he signaled Ao Shiyun to send the horses over. Ao Shiyun was stunned. What's wrong with boss? How can he do such a losing deal? Mo Tianji said in a low voice. Why aren't you sending them over? Ao Shiyun answered in a muddle-headed manner. Then, he led his horse and walked over in a perplexed manner. The few horses followed behind him obediently. The short fatty was also stunned. He had been doing business here for so many years, but he had never encountered such a situation. He didn't even have to bargain. He was giving them away for free. This was simply unbelievable. He laughed dryly and said, Hero, how can I accept this? Chu Yang smiled and said, It's nothing. It's just a few horses. It's worth it to be friends. The short fatty was full of smiles. Hero, you're really a good person. Chu Yang laughed and took 2 steps back. He said, We wish you a fortune. We'll take our leave. The short fatty said, Then, I won't see you off. Chu Yang turned around and held Mo Qingwu's hand. They walked up the mountain. The brothers followed behind in confusion. The short fatty was relieved when he saw that Chu Yang had really left. Just as he was about to turn around, Chu Yang suddenly turned around and asked hurriedly, "How many days has it been since the Saint King went back?" "More than 2 months." The short fatty subconsciously opened his mouth to answer. After saying 3 words, he was suddenly tongue-tied. He was dumbfounded. Who was this young man? How did he know the biggest secret of the 3 Stars Divine Clan? "Oh, it's already been more than 2 months. Chu Yang nodded in understanding and heaved a sigh of relief. Judging from the time, it seemed that after Tan Tan had concluded the matter with the Lan clan, he did not stop at all. He had rushed back to the 3 Stars Divine Clan's headquarters without stopping. "This bastard is quite tactful," Chu Yang said to himself with relief. The short and fat man suddenly became nervous. He looked at Chu Yang, and an ominous glint slowly appeared in his eyes. He asked in a stern voice, "Who are you?" This person actually knew the greatest secret of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. If he was allowed to live, it would be extremely disadvantageous to the Saint King. At this moment, the short and fat man already had the thought of killing him to silence him. Chu Yang looked at him with interest. "Who are you?" The short and fat man's eyes shot out a fierce murderous aura. The comical look from before had long disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a steady and solemn expression. When he stood there, Chu Yang and the others had a feeling at the same time, he is extremely steady. His body had become one with the vast sky, earth, and snow mountains. No one could separate them and no one could defeat them. But at the same time, she felt that he was extremely agile. It was as unfathomable as the snowflakes dancing in the air. An expert. Furthermore, he was a supreme martial artist. A high-level supreme martial artist. A wave of pressure that seemed to have materialized suddenly rolled up from the ground. As if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting, it came crashing down on Chu Yang and the others. Shock flashed across the eyes of the 11 people at the same time. Almost simultaneously, they raised their highest cultivation. Xie Danqiong's eyes became deep. His hands were quietly tucked into his sleeves. As long as he willed it, the viburnum flowers would bloom under this sky full of snow. When the first feeling appeared, Xie Danqiong immediately decided to use the viburnum flowers. And this attack would definitely be at full strength. A strong opponent. Immortal moved slowly, approaching Mo Qingwu. With Mo Tianji on the left and right, Immortal's body was also moving, slowly turning into nothingness. GMO and Luo Kadi pressed their right hands on the hilts of their swords at the same time. Ao Shiyun's body suddenly leaned back slightly. He leaned back less than a finger's distance, but it brought with it a sharp sound of the wind. His hands were suddenly raised to his waist. In an instant, a golden dragon-like luster had already appeared on his hands. Rui Butong's face flushed red, but then it disappeared. His eyes flashed with a faint flame. His right foot moved forward slightly, and his left foot tiptoed lightly. This was the precursor to a rapid charge. As long as they started to attack, Rui Butong would rush forward at the fastest speed, using his own life to create opportunities for his brothers. Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang stood still, but their eyes were shining at the same time. Saber light was faintly circling, and sword intent was surging secretly. Both of them were ready to attack. At this moment, everyone was as if they were facing a formidable enemy. No one could tell the level of this short and fat man's cultivation, but for some reason, the aura he emitted actually made everyone feel more pressured than that of Xiao Chunlei, who was a low-level supreme martial artist back then. And when Xiao Chunlei attacked back then, everyone's cultivation wasn't as high as it was now. In that case, didn't this short and fat man have reached the level of Moonbreeze? In fact, this realization made everyone's hands clench in cold sweat. This extremely comical, extremely stupid, old, ugly and greedy ugly guy was actually such a great expert? Looking at everyone's expressions, a hint of contempt flashed across the short and fat man's lips. He just stared at Chu Yang and asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" Chu Yang was also secretly shocked. Even he himself didn't expect this person to be such a terrifying character. At this moment, Chu Yang suddenly remembered Zi Sheching's comment on Moon Breeze. In this heavenly continent, among those who have fought with me, the two of you can be ranked in the top 10. After that incident, Chu Yang had specially asked Zi Xiecheng about this question. Who were the other 8 people? Because Chu Yang knew that before that, Zi Xiecheng had never fought with Ning Tianya and Bu Luqing, nor with the Dharma Supreme and Wu Juecheng. In other words, in the heavenly continent, Zi Xiecheng had never come into contact with the top few people on the surface. But Moonbreeze could still only be ranked in the top 10. That meant that there was at least another expert hidden in this heavenly continent. Naturally, Zi Xiecheng told Chu Yang everything that she knew. And the person Zi Xiecheng mentioned was very similar to this short and fat man in front of him. 20,000 years ago, someone needed the black blood rose of the black blood forest and barged into the black blood forest alone. There were tens of thousands of experts in the black blood forest. They couldn't be stopped. I was curious and taught him a lesson. This person was quite tall and had a star symbol on his forehead. I didn't think of it then. Now that I think about it, he should be from the 3 Stars Divine clan. After exchanging 15 moves with him, I slapped him on the head and turned his 8 feet tall body into 4 feet. I even tapped on the star on his forehead with my finger. I left him with a memory that he would never be able to get rid of or recover from for the rest of his life. As long as I don't do it personally, his height and forehead will never recover. I didn't want to do this at first, but his name gave me the urge to cripple him. His surname is Gu and his name is Igu. Gu. Since his name is Gu Igu, he's called Gu Igu. Then I'll really make him bulge. He's always too skinny, how can he be called Igu? But this person's skills are very high. If Moonbreeze and Moonbreeze join forces, they shouldn't be a match for him. This was the information Zi Xiecheng told Chu Yang about a person back then. It was also her original words. At that time, Chu Yang laughed so hard that his stomach hurt. How could there be such a strange name and such a strange person in this world? And in the end, Zi Xiecheng even gave him such a strange injury. Zi Xiecheng even said, I took pity on him for having such a high level of cultivation, so I didn't take his life. After severely injuring him, I ordered him to give me 3 heavenly treasures and then gave him the black blood rose. 3 months later, before he recovered from his injury, he gave me the 3 heavenly treasures. Yes, it's among the ones I gave you. Although I changed his body shape, I didn't damage his cultivation. If you meet him in the future, you must be careful. But I reckon that after suffering such a huge blow, he may not continue to roam the martial world with such a high profile. The chances of you meeting him aren't very high. Just be careful. While Chu Yang was thinking about this, the short and fat man opposite him was already rather impatient. He said in a shrill voice, Junior, don't blame me for being ruthless. You can only blame your bad luck. When you go to hell, you must remember that trouble comes from the mouth. Don't speak carelessly in your next life. With a move, he was about to strike. Right at this moment, Chu Yang suddenly let out a strange laugh. He asked, You are Igu? The short and fat man's body, which was like a wooden stake, suddenly landed back on the ground. His round eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he stared at Chu Yang. His current appearance was even more in line with his name, Igu. Who are you? The short and fat man was obviously that Gu Igu. He had already asked, Who are you, 3 times today. Each time, his tone was heavier than the last. This last time, it even brought out a strong sense of surprise. He had been in this heavenly continent for tens of thousands of years, but this was the first time someone called out his name like this. And this person was an outrageously young one. Chu Yang smiled. Do you still remember the people from the Black Blood Forest? Gu Igu let out a startled cry as if he had seen a ghost. He retreated 5 steps like a whirlwind, his eyes bulging even more. He stuttered, Who are you to him? As he spoke, he actually looked left and right, as if worried that that mysterious person from back then would come out and beat him up again. He remembered what happened back then very clearly. Even though 20,000 years had passed, he could still dream of every single detail back then. That was really a nightmare. Just thinking about it made him shudder. I'm your Divine King's senior brother. Has he told you before? Chu Yang smiled. All the brothers were very nervous, But Chu Yang wasn't nervous at all. Because he had absolute confidence that this person wouldn't attack him. Even without Zi Xieching's connection, he wouldn't either. If Tan Tan didn't explain this clearly, then he really wouldn't be the Tan Tan that Chu Yang knew. You are Chu Yang? Divine King Chu? Opposite him, Gu Igu's expression relaxed at once. Tan Tan had indeed told him before. When the previous chapter had just been published, many people were already discussing it. Looks like this battle in the northwest is unusual. The 3 Stars Divine Clan is going to take part in it, plus the dragons, phoenixes, spirits and so on. But there were still many people who didn't see anything and were scolding, why did this unknown short and fat man suddenly appear at this time? I don't know what to say anymore. It's just as Uncle Benshan said, we all read books, so why is there such a huge difference in our comprehension skills? Gee, to be continued. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.